Have you ever noticed how fast the world demands you to be? Faster answers, faster results, faster healing. And if you don't keep up, you feel like you're falling behind, like you're somehow failing at life. But what if I told you that's the biggest lie you've ever been sold? That rushing is what's breaking your mind, your heart, and your peace. And the real power, the real freedom, comes from something nobody talks about anymore: patience. The kind of patience that doesn't just help you wait nicely, but rewires your entire life. The kind that makes you stronger when others panic. The kind that lets you breathe when everyone else is drowning in pressure. The kind that quietly makes you unstoppable without anyone even noticing. Tonight, you're going to learn what most people will never understand. Not because it's complicated, but because real patience feels like rebellion in a world addicted to speed. And if you stay with me till the end, you'll wake up tomorrow with something rare in this world: a calm mind, a fearless heart, and a life that finally feels like it's yours. Are you ready? Let's begin. So, if patience is the quiet power the world forgot, then where does it really begin? Not at the finish line, not when everything finally works out. It begins in the waiting, in that restless space between starting something and seeing the result. The place where most people panic, quit, lash out, or numb themselves with distractions. But if there's one place where true peace is forged, it's there, right in the middle of progress, with nothing guaranteed. That's where we start. Most people only feel comfortable when they can see how things will end. They want the closure, the confirmation, the clean finish. But life rarely works like that. A dream can be halfway built. A healing process can take months. A conversation can end without resolution. And the mind, it hates that. It craves the next step, the answer, the finish line. So it tries to control, rush, obsess, and worry its way through the gap. But Buddhism teaches something radical. The space between intention and result is not a mistake. It's not a delay. It's not an error in timing. It's the real practice. It's where you meet the parts of yourself that only show up when nothing is certain. Waiting without wanting doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop gripping. It means you allow progress to unfold at its own pace without constantly demanding it prove itself. Think of a seed under the soil. The roots are growing long before you see a sprout. But if you dig it up every day to check its progress, you destroy the very growth you're hoping for. Life is like that. So many people kill their peace by overwatching what they've planted. They say they're being patient, but their mind is secretly whispering, "Why hasn't it happened yet?" That whisper is the beginning of suffering, and the more we listen to it, the more we start bargaining with the moment. If this goes well, I'll relax. If I get that answer, then I'll be calm. But real peace doesn't negotiate like that. It rests in the middle, even when the outcome is hidden. So how do you do it? How do you wait without falling into that craving trap? First, by becoming aware of your mental contracts. You might be telling yourself, "I'm okay with waiting as long as it doesn't take too long." That's not patience. That's a ticking clock disguised as calm. Buddhism doesn't teach you to fake patience. It teaches you to dissolve the timer altogether. You start by sitting with the discomfort of not knowing. You don't push it away. You don't distract yourself. You simply breathe into it. You watch the thoughts rise. What if it never works out? What if I wasted my time? What if I look foolish? And instead of answering them, you observe them. Because those questions aren't actually asking for answers. They're testing your presence. Can you stay? Can you stay even when your brain throws every fear at you like darts? That's where the practice is. It's easy to wait when everything's going according to plan. But the real test is when things are messy, when the reply doesn't come, when the result is delayed, when the progress is invisible. That's when the old self wants to take over, the one that needs control, certainty, speed. But that self is built on fear, and patience dismantles it piece by piece. Every time you sit in that uncomfortable silence and refuse to rush it, you're building something stronger than control. You're building trust, not blind hope, not toxic positivity, but deep, grounded trust that even without answers, something sacred is unfolding. This is why so many people give up right before things shift. Not because they're weak, but because they weren't taught how to handle the in-between. They were taught to chase dopamine, not peace. They were taught to reward speed, not presence. But the Buddhist path flips all of that. It teaches that the most important moments of growth happen when nothing external is happening at all. Just you, your breath, and the silence of not yet. That's where the mind wants to run. That's where craving tries to hijack the moment, and that's exactly where you sit. Not to win, not to fix, just to be. Letting go of craving doesn't mean you stop wanting good things. It means your happiness is no longer held hostage by whether or not you get them. You start noticing how much energy you waste obsessing about results. You start noticing how craving pulls you out of the now, how it whispers that this moment isn't enough. But when you really see that clearly, something amazing happens. The craving starts to fall apart. It doesn't have to be pushed away, it just loses its power. Because now, you're not reacting to it, you're watching it. And what is watched loses control. Here's the shift. Stop waiting for the moment to be over. Start being in the moment as it is. Waiting doesn't have to feel like pause, it can feel like presence. The tension doesn't mean something is wrong. It means something is being asked of you, your full attention, your openness, your courage to stop trying to escape it. Because once you realize you can be calm without the outcome no longer owns you. That's real freedom. This is also where identity gets challenged. So many people tie their worth to what they finish, what they produce, what they complete. But Buddhism asks, what if the unfinished version of you is already whole? What if being in process isn't a failure, but a sacred state? That's not how the world usually works. But that's why this path changes everything. It trains you to stop measuring progress by how fast something happens, and start measuring it by how fully you're present in it. Even if it takes weeks, even if it takes years, there are days when you'll feel nothing changing, and that's okay. There are nights when your thoughts will feel heavier because there's no resolution yet. That's part of the training. You're not just learning to be patient, you're learning to live without needing proof, without needing constant signs that something's working. This is how you develop a deep calm that doesn't shatter when things take longer than expected. Because now, You're no longer tied to the timeline. You're tuned into the truth of the moment, which is always now. Craving thrives on future promises. It wants the next thing, the next hit, the next reward. But life doesn't owe us that. And strangely, when you stop demanding it, you start receiving it. Not because you tricked the universe into giving it to you, but because your hands are finally open instead of clenched. You're no longer grabbing, you're receiving. And that's when the middle space, the space between where you started and where you hope to go, starts feeling like home instead of prison. If you've ever stood in a hallway waiting for a door to open, you know the tension. You check your phone, you pace, you wish the wait would end. But what if that hallway is the teaching? What if the real work isn't in what happens when the door opens, but in how you stand there, how you breathe, how you soften, how you stop asking when and start asking, how present can I be with this right now? That's not a passive life, that's an awake one. There will be people who don't understand why you're so calm when things are unfinished. They'll call it detachment. They'll call it laziness. But what they won't see is the depth of your stillness. They won't see how much strength it takes to not chase, not cling, not crave. That's because the world doesn't reward inner strength. It rewards outer noise. But Buddhism isn't here to reward you, it's here to free you. And you can start small. Waiting in traffic without swearing, standing in line without checking your phone, letting someone finish their sentence without rehearsing your reply. Every time you do this, you're breaking the habit of impatience. You're no longer feeding the craving monster that says, now, now, now. You're saying, this is enough. This moment matters too. It's okay if you don't master it overnight. This isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. It's about choosing again and again to return to the moment even when it's dull, uncomfortable, or uncertain. That's the real path. And it leads to something deeper than results. It leads to resilience. The kind that doesn't crack when life takes longer than expected. The kind that sits in silence and hears the sound of peace even when nothing is resolved. So next time you find yourself in the middle, between hope and outcome, between effort and reward, don't run, don't rush. Rest there, not because it's easy, but because it's sacred. That space you want to escape. That's the doorway to the patience that will carry you through everything that's yet to come. If resting in unfinished moments teaches you how to stay when your mind wants to run, there's another hidden battlefield most people never even notice: your tongue. Right there, in the split second between someone's words and your answer, an entire world of peace or chaos can unfold. Most people never realize it. They speak too soon, react too fast, throw words like weapons without even seeing the damage. But Buddhism teaches something powerful. Real strength often shows up not in what you say, but in what you don't say yet. Speech is energy. Once it leaves your mouth, it can't be taken back. And when you speak in a rush, out of anger, fear, or pride, you scatter your own peace into the wind. You trade wisdom for impulse. The soft power of delayed speech isn't about silence for silence's sake. It's about protecting the sacred space between stimulus and response. It's about giving your own mind enough room to breathe, enough room to choose a response rooted in clarity, not chaos. Because every time you pause before replying, you're not just controlling your mouth, you're training your mind. In daily life, the moments where this power matters most are usually the smallest ones. Someone insults you, someone misunderstands you, someone demands an answer when you're not ready, and the old habit wants to jump in, defend, attack, explain, justify. That rush to speak is pure survival instinct. But survival isn't the same as wisdom. Buddhism invites you to feel the heat rise in your chest, the urge to prove yourself and not move right away, to hold the fire without throwing it. There's a kind of magic that happens in the pause. In that tiny delay, you have a choice. You can repeat the old pattern, lash out, defend, escalate, or you can let the moment open up like a flower. You can feel the emotion without being hijacked by it. You can ask yourself, is what I'm about to say true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? These three questions come from ancient Buddhist teachings, and they aren't just moral advice. They are weapons against mindless suffering. True delayed speech doesn't mean bottling up your truth. It means waiting until the mind is clear enough to offer it in a way that heals, not harms. Speaking from the smoke of anger only spreads more fire. Speaking from the stillness of understanding plants seeds instead of grenades. That's why a delayed response isn't weakness, it's supreme intelligence. It's the art of choosing when others are trapped in automatic reaction. You can practice this every day. Start by noticing the first wave of words that want to come out when you're triggered. Don't judge them. Don't shame yourself. Just notice. What's the flavor? Is it defense? Is it attack? Is it panic? Just seeing the flavor gives you power. It moves you from being trapped inside the emotion to witnessing it from a wider space. And once you witness it, you can choose differently. Sometimes, delayed speech looks like simply taking a breath before replying. That breath is not empty. It's a bridge. It's a bridge between the old self who reacts and the new self who responds. It's a moment where wisdom can whisper what anger would never let you hear. In a world that worships quick comebacks and clever clapbacks, this slow grace is revolutionary. And don't be fooled. The delay can be just a second or two. It doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't have to sit there in awkward silence for 10 minutes. A single deep breath, a slight lowering of the shoulders, a quiet checking in with yourself, that's enough to shift the whole energy of a conversation. The more you practice, the more you'll see how much unnecessary suffering comes from rushed words. How many fights could have been softened? How many relationships could have been healed? How many self-inflicted wounds could have been avoided, all by waiting a little longer before opening your mouth? But this isn't just about external peace. It's about internal peace too. Every time you delay your speech wisely, you're protecting your own nervous system. When you speak from anger, you inflame yourself, not just the other person. Your heart races, your body tightens, your mind gets flooded with regrets. But when you pause, even briefly, you give yourself a shield. You refuse to be dragged into storms you didn't start, or at least you refuse to throw fuel on them. Buddhism teaches that wise speech is one of the 8 steps on the Noble Eightfold Path, the roadmap to ending suffering. And wise speech isn't just about telling the truth. It's about speaking at the right time, with the right intention, and sometimes not speaking at all. Silence, when it comes from strength, not fear, is one of the highest forms of communication. And here's the deeper secret. Delayed speech doesn't just protect you in conflicts. It also deepens your love. When someone you care about says something that hits a nerve, your first reaction might be to correct them, defend yourself, or shut down. But if you pause, if you let the initial hurt rise and fall without reacting, you open a door. You give space for understanding to grow where there would have been walls. This discipline is like training a wild horse. At first, your mind bucks and kicks and wants to run wild. It hates waiting. It hates not expressing every impulse instantly. But slowly, with kindness and practice, it softens. It learns to stay still for a moment longer. And in that stillness, you find the real you, not the knee-jerk version, not the fear-driven version, but the you that can choose. In a conversation, the first words that come to your mind are often from your wounds, not your wisdom. But if you wait, if you delay even a heartbeat, you give your wisdom time to catch up. And what a gift that is. For you, for the person you're speaking to, for the world you're building one conversation at a time. Another hidden benefit of delayed speech is that it makes you a better listener. If you're not rushing to reply, you start hearing things you would have missed. The hurt behind someone's anger, the fear behind someone's attack, the loneliness behind someone's arrogance. When you aren't busy preparing your next sentence, you can actually feel the other person. And sometimes feeling them is more powerful than anything you could say. Buddhism isn't about being passive. It's about being powerful in a different way. Not power over others, but power over your own mind. Power over your own reactions. Delayed speech is like holding a sword in a world that only knows how to throw stones. It's silent power. It's inner mastery. And yes, it will be hard at first. You'll bite your tongue and the words will still want to spill out. You'll feel the heat rise and want so badly to interrupt, to correct, to defend. But if you can hold that heat without letting it burst into flames, you're doing something extraordinary. You're breaking cycles that might have been running for generations. You're refusing to pass on the same patterns of reactivity that caused so much pain before. Over time, you'll notice something incredible. When you stop reacting automatically, people stop expecting you to. Conversations become calmer. Trust grows. Respect deepens. Not because you dominate the conversation, but because you bring presence into it. You become the still point in the storm, and that stillness changes everything. In the deepest sense, delayed speech is an act of compassion. Compassion for yourself, not to regret words you didn't mean. Compassion for others, not to inflame their suffering with your own pain. Compassion for the space between two human beings, where healing or harm can happen with just a few words. So, next time your mind rushes to speak, remember, every second you wait, every breath you take, is a vote for peace over chaos. It's a seed planted in the soil of wisdom, and those seeds, they grow into forests of strength, patience, and clarity that not even the strongest storm can tear down. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to pause, to choose, to wait. And in that waiting, you'll find a power most people never even taste. The quiet, unshakable strength of speaking only when your heart is ready and not a moment before. Learning to pause before speaking teaches you how powerful a few seconds can be. But what if the real secret to deep, unshakable patience isn't found in the big moments at all? What if it's hidden in the tiniest cracks of the day, the ones so small most people step right over them without even noticing? If patience can be built one heartbeat at a time, then real mastery begins where almost nobody is looking. Most people think patience is about surviving big tests, waiting for a job offer, holding on through heartbreak, staying calm during a crisis. And while those are important, they're just the surface. The real roots of patience grow underground in the unnoticed places. It's in the tiny seconds where irritation creeps in. It's in the quick flashes where the mind wants to rush. It's when the coffee takes too long to brew, when the elevator is slow, when the person in front of you forgets their wallet at the checkout counter. That's where the real training ground is. And if you miss those moments, you're missing 90% of the path. Micro-patience isn't dramatic. It doesn't feel heroic. But it rewires your entire nervous system from the inside out. Every tiny moment you practice enduring a small delay without reacting feeds a deeper well of calm. It's like adding drops of strength into a hidden reservoir. Drops that one day, when life truly tests you, will become the ocean you float on instead of drowning. The mind hates small delays. It screams, "This is pointless, this is annoying, this doesn't matter." But it does matter, because how you meet the small delays is exactly how you'll meet the big ones. If you can't handle waiting an extra 30 seconds at a red light without stewing in anger, how will you handle waiting 6 months for healing? If you can't stand being put on hold for 3 minutes, how will you endure the uncertainty of a dream still unfolding? The mind practices what it repeats. If it practices impatience 100 times a day in small ways, it won't suddenly find patience when it counts. That's like expecting to run a marathon after sitting on the couch for years. The discipline of micro-patience is about catching those tiny, everyday moments and using them as your gym. So, how do you start? First, you shift your focus. You begin to see daily life not as an obstacle course of annoyances, but as a field of opportunities. Every minor delay is now a training session. Every line, every slow web page, every please hold is a secret invitation to practice. You don't have to go looking for patience challenges. Life serves them up on a silver platter every single day. When you notice the tension rising, the foot tapping, the sigh escaping, the fingers drumming, pause. Feel it. Watch it. Don't shove it down. Don't pretend it's not there. Let the irritation rise, peak, and pass without following it, without feeding it. That moment, that simple act, is micro-patience, and it's stronger than it looks. In Buddhism, mindfulness means seeing clearly without judgment. Micro-patience is mindfulness in motion. It's seeing the urge to rush, naming it, and choosing stillness instead. Not because you're forcing yourself, not because you're pretending not to care, but because you know the truth. Rushing won't make life come faster. Complaining won't make waiting easier. Only presence makes time feel lighter. It's also important to remember that micro-patience is not about becoming numb. You don't have to pretend you love waiting. You don't have to plaster a fake smile on your face every time things slow down. It's enough to simply stay present with the discomfort without letting it control you. To breathe through the tightness, to soften where the body wants to harden, to stay open when the mind wants to close. A powerful technique is to anchor your awareness in your breath during small delays. Stuck at a red light? Feel the inhale and exhale. Waiting for your tea to steep? Notice the weight of your body on the floor. On hold with customer service? Feel the air moving in and out of your nostrils. These tiny shifts keep you rooted. They turn wasted minutes into moments of practice, and over time, your brain starts to associate delay with calm instead of frustration. The same minutes pass, but your inner life is transformed. Another key is reframing the story you tell yourself. Most people meet small delays with stories like, "This is wasting my time," or "This is so annoying." But you can choose different words. You can say, "This is my patience practice. This is my training ground. This is where I grow." Language shapes perception. Change the story and you change the experience. You can even bring a sense of lightness to it. Smile when you notice impatience bubbling up. Laugh gently at how dramatic the mind can be. It wanted everything to move exactly according to its plan. It thought it could control the universe. And here you are, stuck behind a slow walker. Isn't that a bit funny? Humor softens the ego's grip. It reminds you not to take your own frustrations so seriously. Sometimes the delays aren't external. They're internal. A task takes longer than expected. Your energy dips. Your emotions move slower than your plans. Micro-patience with yourself is just as vital. When you stumble, when your progress is slower than your ambition, that's when the real test begins. Can you wait for your own growth without self-punishment? Can you give yourself the same kindness you're learning to give the world? Practicing micro-patience also reveals hidden impatiences you didn't even know you had. You realize how often you interrupt people, how often you rush meals, how often you try to speed up emotions that need time to process. Seeing these patterns isn't a failure, it's gold. Because what you can see, you can change. Over weeks and months, micro-patience reshapes you. The small weights become easier, the bigger weights become manageable. And when life throws something massive your way, a diagnosis, a heartbreak, a dream deferred, you'll find that your heart doesn't collapse under the weight. You've trained for this. You've been building an invisible strength in the quiet moments nobody applauds, nobody sees, and it will hold you steady when it matters most. In the end, patience isn't built in grand, heroic gestures. It's built in small, almost invisible victories. One breath at a time, one pause at a time, one delay at a time. Nobody may notice from the outside, but inside, you'll know, you're no longer a slave to the clock, to the rush, to the craving. You're rooted, you're steady, you're free. Because true patience isn't something you find once and keep forever. It's something you cultivate daily, seed by seed, moment by moment, in the tiny spaces everyone else rushes past. And when you look back, you'll realize those small moments you almost ignored were the moments that changed your life. Training micro-patience in daily life teaches you to stay steady in the small storms. But what happens when the storm isn't outside? What happens when it's inside? When your mind feels messy, your heart feels heavy, and your thoughts pull you in 100 different directions. This is where many people give up. They think patience should feel peaceful. They think waiting should feel clean. But real patience asks something much harder. to stay right in the middle of emotional confusion without running, without shutting down, without turning bitter. That's where the real roots of strength grow, deep down under muddy waters. Nobody talks about the fact that sometimes patience feels ugly. It feels like sitting with a mind that won't calm down, emotions that won't make sense, fears that won't untangle. And the temptation is strong to label it as failure. To think, if I were truly patient, I would feel calm right now. But that's not true. Buddhism teaches that real patience doesn't require the chaos to go away. It requires you to stop demanding that it go away. It requires you to sit down in the mud of confusion, stay awake, and keep breathing. Think of the lotus flower. It doesn't bloom in clear water. It blooms in thick, murky, messy swamps. Its roots sink deep into mud most people would call dirty, ugly, worthless. And yet, from that mud, something sacred rises. That's how inner patience works too. It doesn't come from life being neat and predictable. It comes from learning to sit inside the unknown, inside the contradictions, inside the mess, and still hold your center. Most people only know how to be patient when they feel in control. But when the emotions get tangled, grief mixing with anger, sadness mixing with fear, patience seems to vanish. The mind wants to sort it all out immediately. It wants answers. It wants clarity. It wants to fix. But real growth often means standing inside that emotional fog with no clear answers, no clear exits, and still choosing not to panic. This doesn't mean you become passive or numb. It means you build the kind of patience that doesn't need instant relief to stay grounded. You learn to sit with the tight chest, the restless thoughts, the aching doubts, and instead of escaping, you offer yourself compassion. You say, "It's okay not to be okay right now." That simple phrase is a bridge back to yourself. Because confusion isn't a mistake. It's part of the human experience, and the more you fight it, the deeper you sink. Buddhism often talks about the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is inevitable. Loss, change, uncertainty. But suffering is what we add on top when we refuse to accept what's happening. When you try to force emotional clarity before it's ready, you suffer. When you demand that sadness leave before it's finished teaching you, you suffer. But when you allow the emotions to be muddy, unclear, unfinished, something shifts. The suffering starts to dissolve. Patience in confusion looks like choosing to stay open when your mind wants to slam the door shut. It looks like breathing when the thoughts tell you to run. It looks like listening to your heart when it's speaking in a language you don't fully understand yet. And trusting that even if you don't know the answers now, you are still moving forward. Sometimes the mind will try to convince you that if you're confused, you're broken. That if you don't have clarity, you're failing. But that's a lie born from fear. Confusion is not the enemy. It's a sign that your old understanding is being stretched beyond its limits. That you're growing into a bigger version of yourself, one that can hold more complexity, more depth, more truth. Think about it. Every major transformation in life is preceded by confusion. Before a big decision, confusion. Before a personal breakthrough, confusion. Before forgiveness, before acceptance, before growth, always confusion. It's the natural shaking of the foundation before a new structure can be built. It's not proof you're lost. It's proof you're on sacred ground. Patience here means being willing to stay with the unanswered questions, to resist the urge to rush toward a fake certainty. Quick answers often create false peace. True peace grows slowly, painfully, beautifully in the middle of questions that don't have easy resolutions. And when you realize that, you stop rushing to fix your emotions. You start trusting that what feels messy now is preparing you for a clearer future you can't even imagine yet. One powerful practice is to name what you're feeling without judgment, not to analyze it, not to fix it, just to notice. I feel anxious. I feel sad. I feel confused. Giving language to the emotional mud helps you hold it without drowning in it. It creates a tiny space between you and the feeling, a space where patience can root itself. Another practice is to slow everything down. When confusion rises, the instinct is to speed up, to talk faster, move faster, think faster. But that only makes the mud thicker. Instead, slow your breathing, slow your walking, slow your speaking. Move as if you were carrying something fragile inside you, because you are. That slowness allows your nervous system to stay regulated even when your emotions feel wild. It's also crucial to resist labeling the confusion as bad or wrong. Emotions are not moral failures. They are signals. They are weather patterns passing through your inner sky. You wouldn't hate the rain for falling. You wouldn't blame the wind for blowing. So why blame yourself for feeling mixed up? Patience means allowing the emotional weather to shift in its own time without trying to force sunshine out of a thunderstorm. And remember, clarity often comes quietly, not in a lightning bolt, not in a grand epiphany, but in small whispers that you only hear when you're not rushing to find them. Patience in confusion creates the space where those whispers can reach you. The longer you stay present with the mud, the deeper your roots grow. And when clarity finally blooms, it will not be shallow. It will be the kind of understanding that can't be shaken by the next storm. You will also find that sitting with emotional confusion makes you more compassionate toward others. When you know what it feels like to sit in your own mess without easy answers, you stop demanding neatness from the people around you. You stop expecting them to have it all figured out. You give them space to be messy too. And that space is one of the greatest gifts you can offer in a world that constantly pressures people to pretend they're fine. There's a saying in Buddhism, the lotus grows in muddy water. Not despite the mud, because of it. Without the mud, there would be no flower. Without confusion, there would be no deep understanding. Without emotional chaos, there would be no resilience, no wisdom, no tenderness. So next time you find yourself knee-deep in confusion, heart heavy with mixed feelings, mind clouded with uncertainty, don't fight it, don't rush it, don't hate it. Sit with it, breathe with it. Trust that just like the lotus, something beautiful is growing out of this mess, even if you can't see it yet. Patience isn't neat, it isn't easy, but it's real. And it's in the middle of the emotional mud that the strongest, most radiant parts of you are born. When you learn to stay patient through your own emotional mess, something unexpected begins to happen. You start seeing everyone else's chaos more clearly too. But not just as noise, not just as drama, as reflection, as mirror. The people who annoy you the most, who make you feel restless, irritated, or even furious, they often carry the same restlessness you haven't yet faced within yourself. And what if every time someone else's impatience triggered you, it wasn't just about them, it was pointing directly at something you needed to see? This is where the path deepens. Most people respond to annoying energy with one of two things: fight or flight. They either push back, "Why is this person so frustrating?" or they try to avoid, "I just can't deal with them right now." But Buddhism offers a third way. Observe the trigger, follow it inward, because what irritates you in others often reveals where your own patience still has cracks. Think about it. Why does one person's impatience ruin your peace while someone else's doesn't? It's not just their behavior. It's the way your nervous system interprets that behavior. It's the way your story latches onto it. You might tell yourself, "They're being rude," or "They have no control," or "They're making everything worse." And maybe that's true on the surface, but look deeper. What's really being stirred in you? Maybe their restlessness reflects a part of yourself that you haven't yet accepted. Maybe their need to rush mirrors your own fear of stillness. Maybe their anger touches a part of your past that was never allowed to speak. The point isn't to blame yourself, it's to study yourself. Their behavior becomes a map, not a mess. A mirror, not a monster. This doesn't mean you excuse every rude or reckless person who crosses your path. It means you use each interaction as a chance to sharpen your awareness, not to obsess over what they did wrong, but to ask what their behavior awakens in you. Because that space between "they're annoying" and "why does this bother me" is where real growth begins. Here's an example. Say someone cuts in line and you feel a surge of irritation. Instead of just thinking, "What a jerk," you pause and ask, "What am I really feeling?" Maybe it's disrespect. Maybe it's fear of being overlooked. Maybe it's a memory of all the times you stayed silent when you didn't want to. The present moment opens the door to a buried wound, and now, because of this stranger, you get to meet it. This practice requires brutal honesty. You have to stop clinging to the idea that you're always the calm one, the wise one, the good one. Because the truth is, no one is calm all the time. No one is wise every moment. And every person who triggers you is holding up a mirror to the parts of you that still want to be seen, healed, understood. You'll also start to notice patterns. Maybe every time someone speaks too slowly, you get impatient. Why? Maybe you were raised to rush, taught that stillness meant laziness. Maybe deep down you associate slow speech with incompetence, and that stirs up your own fear of being seen as weak. Again, the behavior of the other person is just the spark. What it lights up inside you is the real lesson. This reflection doesn't just help you become more patient, it makes you more compassionate. When you see that their impatience is just their fear wearing a mask, when you realize it's the same fear you carry in different clothes, the walls between you begin to fall. You stop judging, you start understanding, and suddenly their trigger becomes your teacher. It's also important to be aware of how your own suppressed impatience can surface through judgment. If you've been forcing yourself to appear calm when you're actually frustrated, someone else's loud expression of that same emotion can feel unbearable. Why? Because they're expressing what you've been trying to hide. Their presence threatens the identity you've worked so hard to maintain. But that threat is actually an invitation to stop pretending, to start being real, to let yourself feel what you've been stuffing down. Another layer of this is projection. The things we dislike in others often reflect the traits we disown in ourselves. If you've told yourself that you're never angry, the person who shows rage becomes intolerable. If you see yourself as endlessly patient, the impatient person feels like a threat. But what if their impatience is showing you where yours still hides, quietly, subtly, but still there? And what if welcoming that truth, instead of denying it, made you more whole? This doesn't mean you absorb everyone else's energy. It means you stay curious. You keep your center while watching what rises in you. You learn to say, "This person's impatience is touching something tender in me. What is it?" And even if you don't get the answer right away, the act of asking softens the sharpness. It turns reaction into reflection. And reflection is where wisdom lives. There's also the possibility that their impatience is not mirroring something you are, but something you fear becoming. Maybe you're terrified of being that loud, that reactive, that out of control, and their presence forces you to confront the part of yourself that you try to keep buried. This is shadow work, and shadow work is essential if you want real patience, not just a mask of politeness, but a deep, rooted calm that doesn't depend on everyone around you behaving perfectly. The more you practice this, the less fragile your peace becomes. You stop being thrown off by every personality you don't like. You stop needing the world to be quiet for you to stay calm. Because now, even in the noise, even in the fire, you have an anchor. You're not just reacting, you're watching, you're learning, you're growing. And here's the most surprising part. The more you use others' impatience as a mirror, the more you'll start to feel gratitude. Yes, gratitude, because each of those difficult people helped you see something in yourself, something you might have missed, something you needed. They didn't give it kindly, but they gave it, and you, because of your commitment to this path, turned it into gold. This doesn't mean you should stay in toxic situations or let people walk all over you. Boundaries matter, but when you set boundaries, you do it from clarity, not from emotional reactivity. You don't scream to protect yourself. You speak clearly because you've already done the inner work. You've seen the mirror. You've honored it. And now you can act with wisdom, not just defense. Eventually, your view of annoying people shifts completely. You no longer see them as enemies of your peace. You see them as part of your training, part of your unfolding, part of your own journey to deeper self-awareness. And slowly, you become unshakable, not because life stops being irritating, but because you've stopped running from what the irritation reveals. So next time someone's behavior stirs something in you, don't just roll your eyes. Don't just walk away. Look inside. Ask the hard question, what are they showing me about myself? And then breathe. Watch. Stay open. That moment could change everything. Once you start using the impatience of others as a mirror, you realize something deeper. It's not just people that trigger your restlessness. Sometimes it's the invisible clock you carry inside, that silent pressure screaming that you're behind, that you should have achieved more by now, that you're running out of time. But what if that clock is a lie? What if the panic it creates is the very thing keeping you from peace? If you've ever felt like you're racing through life but never arriving, this is the lesson your nervous system has been waiting for. Most people don't even realize they live inside a prison made of deadlines they created themselves. Deadlines for success, deadlines for healing, Deadlines for clarity, purpose, love, stability. By 30, I should have this. By next month, I need that. By tomorrow, I'll feel better. And every time life doesn't meet the schedule, frustration builds. But Buddhism teaches something radical. Time is not your enemy. The attachment to time is. The idea that your life needs to move at a certain speed in order to be okay, that's the cage. This isn't about ignoring responsibilities or quitting your job. It's about seeing how much suffering comes from racing toward the future instead of resting in the present. There's a difference between external time and psychological time. The external world has clocks and calendars, but inside, time moves differently. Grief takes longer than expected. Growth unfolds on its own terms. Insight doesn't follow appointments, and trying to rush the inner world only deepens the pain. Think about the pressure you feel when things take longer than you hoped. Where does it come from? Often, it's not from reality. It's from comparison, from stories you've absorbed, from false expectations rooted in fear. I should have healed by now. I should be over this. I should have figured it all out already. But according to who? According to what? These aren't natural truths. They're inherited timelines. And the moment you start believing them, you start running. But the finish line keeps moving. You never feel done, never feel enough, never feel still. That's the trap of psychological deadlines. They give you the illusion of structure, but steal your peace. They make you think you're progressing, when all you're really doing is sprinting through a life you haven't even tasted. And what's worse, when the deadline passes and you haven't arrived, shame kicks in, as if being behind schedule makes you broken. But you're not broken. You're just living in a culture that forgot how to move slowly. Slowing down doesn't mean losing momentum. It means moving with presence. It means letting go of the belief that your worth depends on how fast you get there, whatever there even means. The truth is, most people are chasing deadlines that never actually deliver the peace they promise. They say, once I reach this point, I'll relax. But the mind doesn't work that way. It just moves the goalpost. And so you live your whole life waiting for a peace that never arrives, because you never stopped long enough to notice that it was available all along. When you slow down, something powerful happens. You start feeling time differently. Minutes expand. Emotions settle. Ideas ripen. You stop trying to bend life to your schedule, and instead you start listening to the rhythm of life as it actually is. Some things grow fast. Some things take seasons. Some things, like wisdom, trust, and deep love, can't be rushed no matter how hard you try. And the moment you stop trying to rush them, they finally begin to bloom. One of the simplest ways to exit psychological urgency is to question the internal pressure when it arises. When you feel that inner voice saying, "This needs to happen now," pause. Ask it, why now? Who said so? What am I afraid will happen if I wait? Often, the urgency is a mask for fear. Fear of being left behind, fear of being forgotten, fear of being unloved, unworthy, invisible. But naming the fear makes the deadline lose its power. Now, you're not chasing a ghost. You're facing a feeling, and that's where freedom begins. Another practice is to deliberately slow down in moments when the rush feels strongest. When you're typing fast, slow your fingers. When you're walking briskly, take half steps. When you're overwhelmed by thoughts, speak slower. These small shifts tell your body and mind, there's no emergency here. And that message ripples through your whole system like a calming wave. It's also helpful to stop measuring your progress by how much you've achieved. In Buddhism, progress is measured by how present you are, not by how far you've gone, not by what you've accomplished, but by how deeply you're rooted in the now, because only in the now can true transformation happen. The future is just a thought, the past is just a memory. But this moment is alive, and it's where your freedom lives. This shift can feel disorienting at first. When you've spent your whole life being rewarded for rushing, slowing down feels unnatural. You might feel guilty, lazy, unproductive, but those feelings are just withdrawal symptoms from a life of addiction to speed, and they pass. What replaces them is a depth of presence that can't be bought, rushed, or faked. Even your relationships change when you let go of urgency. You stop trying to force people to understand you faster. You stop demanding that others move at your pace. You start honoring their timing, just as you're learning to honor your own. And suddenly, communication gets softer. Conflict slows down. Connection deepens. Because when people don't feel rushed, they feel safe. And when they feel safe, they open. There's an old Zen saying, "Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished." You look at the mountains, the rivers, the trees, they're not racing toward a finish line, and yet everything unfolds in perfect timing. You are part of that same nature. You are not a machine. You are not a deadline. You are not late for your life. There's something profoundly healing about accepting that your journey is not supposed to look like anyone else's. The moment you drop the comparison is the moment you start living from your own truth. You stop asking, "Am I where I should be?" and start asking, "Am I here?" And the more you stay here, the more timeless you become. Timelessness isn't about escaping time, it's about slipping underneath it. It's about accessing a state of being where presence replaces pressure, where the mind isn't counting minutes but savoring moments, where you're no longer worried about what's next because what's now is finally enough. This state isn't unreachable. It's not reserved for monks on mountaintops. It's available to you in the middle of your normal day, while cooking, while walking, while waiting. Every time you release the need to rush, you step closer to it. Every time you resist the voice that says, "Hurry up," you train your system to stay grounded in stillness. And here's the deepest truth. Nothing meaningful in life happens on a deadline. Real love doesn't follow a schedule. Grief doesn't stick to a calendar. Awakening doesn't care about your 5-year plan. The most important moments in life arise on their own time. Your only job is to be ready to receive them when they come. And that readiness comes from slowing down, from letting go, from becoming timeless. So the next time you feel behind, late, rushed, panicked, pause, breathe, question the clock inside your mind, and gently remind yourself, you are not a machine. You are not running out of time. You are becoming, and becoming doesn't happen faster with pressure. It happens deeper with presence. Once you step out of the rush and begin to taste the quiet strength of timelessness, another truth slowly comes into view. How you carry your energy matters just as much as how fast you move. And in a world addicted to intensity, noise, and sharp responses, we forget the quiet power of staying warm, without boiling over. We forget that real patience isn't frozen stillness, it's a steady, living heat, just like a tea kettle. And in that image lies one of Buddhism's most important lessons. The tea kettle doesn't scream from the start. It doesn't erupt the moment you turn on the heat. It simmers. It holds its warmth. It builds energy slowly, steadily, without rushing. It's not lazy. It's not passive. It's deliberate. And that's what your mind needs to become. Not explosive, not sluggish, just consistently warm. A tea kettle mind is one that knows how to generate sustainable strength, not because it burns hottest, but because it knows how to hold its heat over time. Anger is like sharp boiling. It flashes quickly. It's loud, aggressive, and then it crashes. Most people live like this, spiking with emotion, then falling into exhaustion. But that cycle doesn't build anything. It destroys relationships, burns energy, and leaves a mess to clean up afterward. Patience, on the other hand, is the slow simmer that allows transformation to actually take root. It's the steady fire under the surface that turns raw into refined. When you live with a tea kettle mind, you don't need to explode to make an impact. You don't need to shout to be heard. You carry an energy that speaks through presence, not pressure. And this kind of energy builds real trust within yourself and with others. Because it's not unstable, it's not unpredictable, it's consistent, it's strong, but never violent. The problem is, we've been taught that only dramatic energy gets results, that the loudest person in the room wins, that urgency means importance, that pressure means progress. But Buddhism flips this thinking completely. It teaches that the calm, consistent flame does more than any violent burst ever could. A single steady action, repeated with awareness, is more powerful than 1,000 intense reactions fueled by frustration. Living like this starts with how you manage your emotions. When anger rises, you notice it, but you don't serve it. You let it rise, like the temperature in a kettle, but you don't let it boil over. You breathe through the tension, you stay with the heat, and instead of erupting, you transform it. You turn the fire inward, not to hurt yourself, but to refine yourself. Like how heat purifies water, your awareness purifies the emotion. You stay with it long enough for it to soften into wisdom. This doesn't mean you suppress how you feel. It means you learn to hold it without being ruled by it. Holding heat isn't weakness, it's strength in disguise. It means you have the capacity to endure the discomfort without needing to dump it onto someone else. And that, right there, is emotional maturity. The difference between someone who's reactive and someone who's truly grounded. You can practice this every day in subtle ways. When something frustrates you, before reacting, feel the heat in your body. Notice where it rises. The chest, the neck, the stomach. Let it be there. Breathe into it. Don't label it as wrong. Just hold it like a tea kettle holds its warmth, quietly, firmly. And in that holding, you'll feel your mind begin to settle. You'll find that you don't need to yell or snap or prove your point. You've already won the battle by not boiling over. This approach also helps you make better decisions. When your mind isn't flaring up with emotion, it can see more clearly. You're not reacting to surface impulses. You're responding from depth. That changes everything. How you talk to your partner, how you handle stress at work, how you speak to yourself when you're hurting. With a simmering mind, even tough conversations lose their edge. You're not fighting for control. You're speaking from calm, and that calm carries a weight people feel without you having to push it. Even your motivation shifts. Instead of chasing goals with panic and pressure, you move toward them with steady intention. You no longer need the rush of a deadline to get started. You don't crash into burnout 2 weeks in, because you're not trying to force the fire. You're feeding it gently, consistently, with patience. Like a slow-cooking meal, your effort becomes rich, grounded, and nourishing. It also means you can last longer in difficult situations without falling apart. The person who burns out is rarely the one who lacks passion. It's the one who keeps trying to boil every situation with intensity. But intensity is a terrible fuel source. It runs out fast. Then you're left with nothing. But when your energy is built on gentle simmering, you don't collapse at the first sign of struggle. You endure, you adjust, you remain. A tea kettle mind also protects your relationships. So many arguments happen not because people truly disagree, but because they meet each other with boiling minds. One person lashes out, the other responds with heat, and suddenly the whole conversation is steam and pressure. But when even one person stays in simmer mode, the dynamic changes. You don't need to match their fire. You hold your own warmth, your own peace, and often that softens them too. This doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. It means your strength is quiet, not loud. It's steady, not spiking. It's not passive, it's intentional. And that makes it far more powerful than aggression ever could be. There's also something deeply nourishing about carrying this energy within yourself. You become a refuge, not just for others, but for yourself. When life gets hard, when emotions get tangled, when the world spins too fast, you become the one place you can trust, because you know how to simmer. You know how to hold pressure without exploding. You've built that capacity, one moment at a time, through your own breath, your own awareness, your own discipline. This energy even starts to change how people experience you. They feel safer around you. They open up more. They trust you more, not because you say all the right things, but because your energy is safe. Steady, not full of sharp edges or sudden temperature spikes. You become the calm in the room, the kettle that never boils over. And in that calm, something sacred grows. Wisdom, real wisdom. Not the kind that just knows the right answer, but the kind that knows when to speak, when to wait, when to hold, and when to let go. That wisdom doesn't come from books. It comes from presence, from patience, from heat that never had to scream to be felt. So next time you feel your inner fire rising, pause. Don't try to kill it. Don't fear it. Hold it like a tea kettle holds warmth. Let it rise slowly. Let it teach you. And when the moment comes to speak, to act, to decide, you'll be ready, not with a burst, but with a clarity that could only come from a mind that simmered instead of boiled. After learning to simmer instead of boil, something starts to shift, not just in how you react, but in how you hope, in how you expect things to unfold. And this is where a deeper kind of impatience starts to surface. It's not loud, it's not angry, it's subtle. It hides behind the smile of the spiritual seeker. It wears the robe of effort, meditation, kindness, discipline. But behind all of that, a quiet hunger, a wish to be rewarded, a hope that says, I'm doing the right things, so why don't I feel peaceful yet? This is the trap we step into when we treat karma like a vending machine. People step onto the spiritual path with good intentions. They want to grow, they want to heal, they want to be free from pain. And somewhere along the line, they start to believe that if they meditate enough, read enough, forgive enough, they'll get something back. They expect calm, they expect insight, they expect life to respond like a fair transaction. But life doesn't operate like a business contract. It's not, you put in X effort, get Y result. Especially not on a timeline the mind approves of. That's not how karma works. Karma means cause and effect, yes. But it doesn't mean control. It doesn't mean guaranteed outcomes. It doesn't mean instant results wrapped in enlightenment bows. Karma is subtle. It ripens when it's ready. It unfolds according to conditions far beyond what the ego can predict. The moment we expect spiritual practice to pay us back on demand, we stop practicing. We start bargaining. That bargaining is so sneaky. You might sit in meditation thinking, okay, I'm breathing, I'm being present, I'm letting go. So where's the peace? You might show compassion and secretly think, when will this kindness finally come back to me? You might chant mantras or read sutras and silently expect a reward for it all. But that expectation is just another form of craving. It's craving dressed in robes. And the moment craving enters, suffering follows. One of the hardest truths in spiritual growth is this: you're not entitled to feel good just because you're doing the work. That's the ego's logic, not wisdom. True practice asks you to keep showing up even when nothing seems to change, even when the insights don't land, even when the peace doesn't come. Because that's when your practice becomes real, not when it's easy, not when it's rewarding, but when it's empty, when it asks everything of you and offers nothing in return, yet. This doesn't mean the path is pointless. It means the path is honest, and honesty is slow. Just like a tree takes years to bear fruit, your spiritual work takes time to ripen. And you don't dig up the roots just to check the progress. You water, you wait, you trust. And that trust becomes your real teacher. Many people fall into despair because they mistake silence for failure. They think, I've been doing the work, but I still feel anxious, still feel lost, still get triggered. What's the point? But that's the moment you need to remember. Karma isn't always loud. Growth isn't always visible. Insight doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes the biggest changes are happening underground, in ways you can't yet see. The stillness is the work. You might be softening old habits you don't even realize are loosening. You might be purifying lifetimes of conditioning just by sitting in silence each morning. You might be planting seeds of clarity that won't bloom for years, but they're blooming. You just haven't met them yet. This is why letting go of immediate results is such an important part of patience. It clears the air of expectation. It makes room for grace to move on its own schedule. You're no longer trying to use Buddhism or meditation or mindfulness as tools to force peace. You're letting them do what they're meant to do, transform you slowly, deeply, from the inside out. And ironically, the moment you stop chasing results is when they start to show up. Not because you manipulated them, but because your energy is finally clear enough to receive. You're no longer holding out your hands, demanding something. You're sitting open, available, patient. That space attracts what you're striving pushed away. This detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means your caring becomes unconditional. You meditate not because it gives you peace, but because it's how you return to yourself. You forgive not because it guarantees healing, but because it's who you want to be. You practice kindness not for karma points, but because kindness makes you lighter, even when no one notices. These actions become your way of being, not a transaction, but a transformation. It also protects you from burnout. So many people burn out on the spiritual path because they treat it like a productivity hack. How can I fix my anxiety in 5 steps? How can I manifest the life I want in 30 days? But the soul doesn't work like that. It resists being turned into a project. And when your practice becomes just another way to control your experience, it collapses under its own pressure. The alternative is surrender. Not in a weak way, but in the strongest way possible. Surrender means showing up for your practice like you would for someone you love, not because they owe you something, but because it's your joy to show up, because the relationship itself is sacred, and with every moment you dedicate to presence, to compassion, to mindfulness, you strengthen that relationship, even if nothing visible changes. This kind of patience is rare. It's the patience of monks who sit for decades, of seekers who keep walking even when the path disappears into fog, of people who smile without needing a reason and love without needing applause. It's the kind of patience that says, I trust that something is unfolding, even if I don't understand it yet. And that trust, that's what transforms your whole life. You stop trying to speed up healing. You stop trying to measure your growth every week. You stop checking your emotional pulse to see if your efforts are working. Instead, you live, you breathe, you show up again tomorrow. You keep planting, because one day, maybe when you least expect it, the peace will bloom. The clarity will arrive. The insight will land, not as a lightning bolt, but as a quiet knowing that you never needed to rush to begin with. So the next time you find yourself thinking, why hasn't this worked yet? Pause, breathe, notice the craving hiding in the question, and choose again. Choose to return to your breath, not for reward, but for refuge. Choose to act with compassion, not for recognition, but because compassion is your nature. Choose to sit, to stay, to trust, without needing proof. Karma doesn't forget. The seeds you plant now are not lost. They're just underground, growing, waiting. Trust that. And when you do, your spiritual path becomes not a race, but a home. Not a vending machine, but a field where every act of love, every breath of awareness, every choice to stay present is planting something sacred. And that sacred thing is already becoming you. Letting go of the need for instant results clears a huge space inside, but into that space creeps another craving, quieter, trickier, and just as dangerous. It's not craving for rewards anymore. It's the craving to be seen a certain way, to be right, to be respected, to be first. Even when you give up chasing peace like a prize, the ego still whispers, at least let me win. At least let me be better. At least let me be important. And if you don't catch it, this hunger can eat your patience from the inside out. The need to be right is one of the deepest traps of the mind. It's a craving that hides inside arguments, inside social media comments, inside silent judgments of people who think differently than you. The ego thrives on it. It builds its walls around it. I'm more awake than them. I'm wiser. I'm ahead. It feels safe. It feels powerful. But that power is hollow. And the more you feed it, the more you lose your real strength. Learning to starve. This hunger is one of the most difficult forms of patience you'll ever face, because it feels like you're losing something when you let it go. It feels like you're giving up ground. It feels like you're letting someone else win. But Buddhism teaches that true victory doesn't come from proving you're right. It comes from becoming free from the need to prove anything at all. Most arguments, most suffering between people boil down to this. One or both parties need to be seen as right. They need their view validated. They need their position defended. And because of that need, the conversation stops being about understanding. It becomes a battlefield. Words become weapons. Listening becomes waiting for your turn to strike. And nobody actually hears anything. Nobody grows. The real power is in staying steady when your ego screams to jump in. When someone misunderstands you and instead of rushing to correct them, you breathe. When someone accuses you unfairly and instead of attacking back, you stay rooted. When you know you could argue and win, but you choose not to, because you've seen that winning the argument would cost you something far more precious, your peace. This doesn't mean you let lies stand unchallenged when truth matters. It means you pick your battles from wisdom, not from wounded pride. It means you stop letting your ego trick you into thinking every disagreement is a threat to your existence. It's not. You are bigger than any misunderstanding. You are deeper than any accusation. You are wider than any momentary clash. When the ego doesn't get fed, it throws tantrums inside you. It stirs up urgency. Say something. Defend yourself. Show them they're wrong. But if you can endure that inner fire without feeding it, something extraordinary happens. The fire burns out. The craving dissolves. And underneath, you find a kind of patience that's almost impossible to disturb. This is the patience of great teachers, the patience of people who can sit through insult, misunderstanding, even mockery, without losing their center. Not because they are numb, but because they no longer need external validation to feel secure. Their security comes from within, from a peace that no praise or blame can touch. Training yourself in this way begins with awareness. You start noticing when the need to be right rises. You feel it in the tightening of your stomach, the heat in your chest, the rush of thoughts preparing your defense. You don't shame yourself for it. You don't fight it. You just notice it. There's my ego, hungry again. And you breathe. You soften. You let the moment pass without jumping into the game. Sometimes this means sitting silently when every cell in your body wants to correct someone. Sometimes it means listening fully to a viewpoint you disagree with without interrupting. Sometimes it means walking away from a fight that your pride desperately wants to win. Every time you do this, you're not losing. You're winning the only battle that matters, the battle against your own inner need for superiority. And here's the secret. When you stop needing to be right, you actually become wiser. Your mind opens, your heart softens. You start learning from everyone, not just the ones you agree with. You see truths hidden even inside views you once rejected. You grow beyond the narrow box the ego wants to trap you in. You also become more powerful in a quieter, deeper way. People feel the difference. They sense that you're not here to dominate them. You're not playing the game. And because you're not playing, you're free. Nothing they say can pull you off your center. Nothing they believe can shake your peace. You become the calm eye in the storm of opinions. And in that calm, people often find themselves softening too. Because your patience isn't passive, it's magnetic. It pulls others toward truth without a single word of force. Your example teaches more than any argument ever could. But there's another hunger the ego carries that must also be faced. The need to be first, to be ahead, to be recognized as better, faster, smarter, more enlightened. And this hunger can even infect your spiritual path. You start comparing your progress to others. You wonder if you're meditating better, forgiving faster, understanding more deeply. You look sideways instead of inward. But true growth is not a race. There are no medals for awakening, no trophies for inner peace. And comparing your path to someone else's is like comparing the blooming of two different flowers. Each unfolds according to its own timing, its own nature, its own mysterious dance with life. Trying to be first in a journey that has no finish line is madness. The way out is to remember, you're not here to be first. You're not here to be right. You're here to be free. Free from the chains of validation, free from the addiction to approval, free from the need to win in a game that only the ego invented. This freedom feels strange at first. It feels like giving up, like disappearing. But what you're really doing is shedding layers of false identity. You're not becoming less, you're becoming more real, more grounded, more alive. And this patience, the patience to let go of being right, of being first, is not just for your own sake. It's for everyone you touch. Every time you choose presence over pride, you create a little more space in the world for understanding, for healing, for peace. You also start to see how deeply other people are trapped by the same hunger. You see their rush to prove themselves, their fear of being wrong, their need to be recognized, and instead of judging them, you meet them with compassion because you've been there. You know how heavy that hunger is, how exhausting that race becomes, and maybe, just maybe, by holding your own center, by refusing to feed your own ego, you offer them a glimpse of another way, a way where winning doesn't matter, where peace is enough, where presence is everything. So the next time the craving rises, to correct, to prove, to dominate, pause, breathe, remember who you really are, not a mouthpiece for your ego, not a contestant in some imaginary race, but a living, breathing presence, wide enough to hold the moment without needing to conquer it. This is patience at its highest form. This is where real strength lives, not in the sharpness of your arguments, not in the speed of your achievements, but in the quiet, stubborn courage to stay soft when everything inside you wants to harden. When you finally stop feeding the hunger to be right or first, something inside you softens in a way that can't be faked. And out of that softening grows a new kind of patience, one that's no longer about surviving your own emotions, but about making room for someone else's journey too. A patience that isn't about endurance. It's about love. It's about stretching your own timeline wide enough to let other people grow at their natural pace, even when it's slower, messier, or more painful than your mind wants it to be. Most people mistake patience for tolerance. Tolerance sounds like gritting your teeth, like waiting for someone to catch up to your standards, like putting up with things until they change. But Buddhism teaches a deeper truth. Real patience is compassion stretched across time. It's not waiting for someone to improve so you can finally love them. It's loving them while they're still in the middle of their chaos, while they're still learning, while they're still falling short. Think about the people in your life who have hurt you, disappointed you, confused you. The ones you want so badly to wake up, to do better, to get it together. Your mind tells you that once they change, everything will be fine. But real compassion asks a harder question. Can you stay open even before they change? Can you let go of the need for them to evolve on your timeline? This doesn't mean accepting abuse or staying in harm's way. It means recognizing that real growth cannot be forced, not in yourself, not in anyone else. You can inspire, you can guide, you can love. But you cannot speed up someone else's awakening. Trying to do so only creates frustration, resentment, and pressure that makes real growth even harder. Compassion as temporal expansion means you stretch your patience wider than your expectations. You stop looking at the calendar. You stop counting how many chances you've given. You stop measuring someone's worth by how quickly they heal or change. You love them in their unfinishedness. You love them in their stumbling. You love them in their slowness. This is hard because the ego loves quick results, not just for itself, but for everyone it touches. You might think, if I can see clearly, why can't they? But that thought is a trap. Your clarity is your own. It came at a cost only you know. And they too are paying costs you can't see, carrying weights you don't understand, walking paths that make no sense from the outside but are teaching them exactly what they need. Real compassion respects that mystery. It respects that life unfolds differently for every being. Just like seeds bloom at different times, even if planted on the same day, so do souls awaken at their own rhythm. Some seeds take days, some take decades, and no amount of pushing, shaming, or pleading will make them grow faster. In fact, pressure often crushes what could have unfolded naturally with time and care. This kind of patience is a spiritual muscle most people never develop because it hurts to stretch it. It hurts to watch someone stay stuck when you can see a way out. It hurts to love someone who keeps hurting themselves. It hurts to believe in someone who keeps falling short. But if you can sit with that pain without shutting your heart, something incredible happens. You become a true ally to their growth, not an obstacle. When you stop demanding that someone be different before you offer your love, your attention, your forgiveness, you create a space where real change becomes possible. Because now they're not changing to earn your approval. They're not growing because they're being punished. They're growing because they finally feel safe enough to unfold in their own time. This doesn't mean enabling destructive behavior. It doesn't mean abandoning your own boundaries. Compassion with temporal expansion also includes compassion for yourself. If someone's journey is harming you, you have every right to protect your peace. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is to love someone from a distance, to let them walk their hard path without dragging you down with them. But even then, the love remains. The door remains open. The heart remains soft. The beauty of this practice is that it frees you too. When you let go of trying to control someone else's growth, you release yourself from endless cycles of frustration and disappointment. You stop seeing other people's slow healing as personal failure. You stop making their journey about your timeline, and you begin to experience relationships in a whole new way, not as projects to be fixed, but as mysteries to be honored. It also changes how you see your past. You begin to forgive yourself for all the years it took you to learn certain lessons. You stop resenting your younger self for not waking up faster. You realize that just as you needed every wrong turn, every mistake, every heartbreak to become who you are today, so does everyone else. Growth isn't linear, it's messy, it's sacred, and it can't be rushed, no matter how much love you pour onto it. Living with this kind of patience makes you radically different from the world around you. In a culture obsessed with quick fixes, fast progress, and instant transformation, you become a rare presence. You become the one who can sit quietly while someone else struggles without trying to fix them. You become the one who can believe in someone without pressuring them. You become the one who understands that real change often looks like failure until suddenly it doesn't. And over time, something beautiful happens. The people around you start to feel it. They sense the absence of pressure, the absence of judgment. They feel the open space you hold for them, and in that space, they begin to relax. They begin to breathe. They begin to unfold, not because they were pushed, but because they were trusted. This trust is powerful medicine. It heals wounds that shame can never touch. It calls forth strengths that fear can never awaken. It says, "I believe you are more than your mistakes. I believe you are more than your timeline. I believe in the goodness inside you, even when you can't see it yourself." And the more you practice this with others, the more you naturally practice it with yourself. You stop rushing your own evolution. You stop panicking over how long it's taking to heal, to forgive, to understand. You start trusting your own timing too. You give yourself the same wide, loving space to grow that you offer to others. In the end, patience isn't just about enduring time. It's about expanding time with love. It's about making room for the slow miracles that only happen when you stop insisting, "Hurry up." It's about believing that nothing truly precious can ever be rushed. Not trust, not healing, not love, not awakening. So the next time you feel that tightness rise, the urge to fix, to hurry, to force, pause, breathe, stretch your heart a little wider. And remember, growth doesn't happen on your schedule, it happens on life's schedule, and life knows exactly what it's doing. When you expand your patience to allow others to grow at their own pace, another even deeper challenge begins to reveal itself. It's not just about slowing down for others, it's about sitting quietly in front of what cannot be fixed. The heartbreak that won't mend overnight. The illness that has no clear cure. The relationship that may never go back to how it once was. And in these places, the instinct to fix, to repair, to force change can be overwhelming. But Buddhism points to a different kind of courage, the courage to stay with brokenness without rushing to erase it. There's a part of the human heart that hates seeing anything incomplete. It wants to stitch up every tear. It wants to smooth over every crack. It wants to jump into action because action feels like power. Sitting still feels like defeat. And yet, true patience, the patience that transforms your whole relationship with life, demands that you face what cannot be solved immediately and meet it with stillness, not struggle. The fixer inside us is not evil. It's born from care, from love, from a genuine wish to ease suffering, but it also comes from fear. Fear of helplessness, fear of loss, fear of admitting that some things hurt, and no amount of effort will undo that right away. The fixer tells you, do something now, or you'll lose control. But Buddhism teaches, true peace isn't about controlling the brokenness. It's about becoming big enough to hold it. Think about someone you love who is suffering. Think about the instinct to say the perfect thing to take away their pain, to give them advice, to push them toward healing, not because they asked, but because you can't bear the feeling of watching them hurt. And in that moment, if you look closely, you'll see it's not just about helping them, it's also about trying to soothe your own discomfort. When you move too quickly to fix, you rob the other person of their own process. You rush them past their feelings. You signal, without meaning to, that their brokenness is a problem to be solved rather than a reality to be honored. And in doing so, you miss the most powerful offering you could give, your patient presence. Sometimes, the greatest act of compassion is to sit silently beside someone in their pain, not to give answers, not to hand them solutions, but to say, simply with your being, I am not afraid of your brokenness. I am not rushing you to heal. I trust your heart to find its own way. And what's true for others is even more true for ourselves. Think about the parts of yourself that still hurt, still doubt, still struggle. How often do you pressure yourself to get over it already? How often do you turn your own wounds into projects that must be completed? The fixer doesn't just operate outwardly, it turns inward too. And in doing so, it keeps you from offering yourself the deep, slow healing you actually need. The truth is, some things can't be fixed in the way you want them to be. Some losses are permanent, some endings are real, some scars remain. And real patience is not about pretending otherwise. It's about learning to stay with the sadness, to stay with the ache, to stay with the incomplete story that may never tie up into a neat ending. This kind of patience is fierce. It's not passive. It's not numb. It's active endurance. It's the strength to open your heart to a reality that doesn't bend to your wishes and still choose love over fear, still choose to breathe even when breathing hurts. You can start practicing this by noticing the small moments when the fixer wants to take over. When a friend shares their sadness and you jump to offer advice before they even finish speaking. When your own discomfort rises and you immediately reach for distraction or solutions. When silence falls and you scramble to fill it. These are the moments to pause, to breathe, to stay a little longer in the uncomfortable space, not to suffer needlessly, but to stop rushing life to be different. There's a sacred humility in admitting you don't have all the answers, that you can't save everyone, that you can't even save yourself from every hard thing. And that's okay. That's not failure. That's the beginning of true compassion. Compassion for the world as it is. Compassion for the wounds that don't heal overnight. Compassion for the mystery of suffering itself. And strangely, when you stop trying to fix everything, healing often comes more naturally. Not because you forced it, but because you made room for it. Because you trusted the deeper processes at work beneath the surface. Because you stopped digging at the soil and let the seed grow in its own hidden way. This patience also changes the way you see progress. You stop measuring healing by how fast the pain disappears. You start measuring it by how gently you can stay with yourself in the middle of the pain, not judging, not pushing, just staying, just breathing, just being present with what is. In relationships, this changes everything. You stop needing to fix your partner's moods. You stop needing to solve your friend's heartbreak. You start trusting that people are allowed to be broken sometimes, just like you are. And you offer them your greatest gift, not solutions, not strategies, but your calm presence, your patient heart, your steady belief that brokenness is not the end of the story. This doesn't mean you don't help when it's needed. Action has its place. But you move from a different place now, not from panic, not from discomfort, but from deep listening, from the wisdom that knows when to act and when to simply sit with. Over time, you'll notice something profound. The more you quiet the fixer, the more peace enters your life. Not because everything is fixed, but because you're no longer fighting reality. You're no longer demanding that pain be cleaned up on your schedule. You're no longer making yourself responsible for mending every broken thing you encounter. You'll also find more resilience. Because now, when life breaks in ways you can't control, you don't shatter with it. You know how to stay, how to breathe, how to endure without hardening, without losing your tenderness. That's a rare strength, and it's built one moment at a time, each time you choose to sit with brokenness instead of running from it. In a world obsessed with solutions, you become something revolutionary, a presence that doesn't demand perfection, a heart that doesn't flinch from the unfinished, a soul that knows how to honor the cracks as much as the light. So next time you feel the urge to fix, to rush, to control, pause, breathe, let the brokenness be there a little longer. Trust that you don't have to heal it all today. That love, real love, includes patience for the parts of life that stay messy, that some beauty can only be seen when you're brave enough to look at what hasn't healed yet, and love it anyway. When you stop rushing to fix everything, when you finally learn to sit quietly with the broken places of life, something even deeper starts to unfold. A new relationship with movement itself. You begin to see that not all movement is healing, and not all stillness is failure. But the world has taught you the opposite. It says, if you're not busy, you're falling behind. If you're not acting, you're wasting time. If you're not pushing forward, you're being weak. And that lie keeps countless hearts trapped in endless, restless striving. Buddhism offers a clearer truth. Real patience often looks invisible, but it's never inactive. It's like the wind and the flag, silent forces moving in ways the eye can't always see. Most people mistake delay for laziness. If a project stalls, if a conversation pauses, if a dream takes longer than expected, panic rises. You start thinking you're stuck. You start doubting yourself. You start questioning your path. But just because you can't see obvious movement doesn't mean nothing is happening. The wind doesn't shout as it moves, and often neither does growth. When a flag flutters, you know the wind is there. But if the flag hangs still, it doesn't mean the air has disappeared. It means the conditions aren't calling for visible motion yet. Underneath, the currents still exist. They're just not obvious. In the same way, patience teaches you to trust that unseen forces are still at work, even when your life looks quiet, even when progress seems paused. There are seasons in life when everything feels urgent, fast, kinetic. And there are seasons when everything slows down, when doors stay closed, when the answers don't come. The ego hates the second kind. It sees stillness and assumes failure. It sees quiet and assumes death. But wisdom sees something different. Wisdom knows that deep roots grow in silence, that unseen shifts happen in waiting seasons, that some of the most important transformations are too subtle for the eye to catch until much later. This doesn't mean you stop acting when action is needed. It means you stop panicking when the action is invisible. You start learning to feel the inner movement that doesn't always match the outer results. You start sensing the quiet work happening in the background of your soul, the slow stitching together of insights, the hidden strengthening of resolve, the invisible softening of old rigidities. You also begin to realize that rushing just to appear active is one of the most exhausting traps of modern life. How often do people stay busy just to silence their own fear of standing still? How often do people pursue goals they don't even care about just so they can say they're moving? But patience whispers a different invitation. Don't move for movement's sake. Move when it's true. Move when it's clear. Move when the deeper currents inside you say now, and when those currents say wait, trust that too. This shift rewires how you handle challenges. When obstacles arise, you don't instantly scramble for solutions. You listen. You observe. You feel for the deeper intelligence moving through the situation. Sometimes that intelligence says, act now. Sometimes it says, pause and watch. Learning to tell the difference is the heart of real patience. It's also the heart of real wisdom. You also stop judging yourself for needing longer than others. Some flowers bloom early, some bloom late. Some seeds sleep in the earth for years before sprouting. Are the late bloomers wrong? Are the slow growers failures? Of course not. They're just moving at the pace life designed for them, and so are you. When you hold this understanding close, a lot of old anxiety starts to dissolve. You stop feeling behind. You stop measuring your life by how busy you look. You start honoring the spaces between action as part of the process, not interruptions of it. You see that stillness isn't a void, it's a womb. It's where the next true movement gathers its strength. You'll also notice that your actions, when they do arise, are cleaner, sharper, more aligned, because they're not coming from panic or pressure. They're coming from clear seeing, from deep listening. They have weight, precision, and power. One well-timed step taken from patience is worth 100 frantic steps taken from fear. This doesn't mean you won't sometimes get restless. You will. You're human. The urge to prove yourself by doing something will still rise. The fear of wasting time will still whisper. But now you know not to believe it blindly. Now you can pause and ask, is this true movement or just noise? And that question alone can save you years of wasted energy. Another shift you'll feel is a new respect for timing, not just your own, but everyone's. You stop expecting people to change overnight. You stop demanding that circumstances shift instantly. You recognize that real growth, real healing, real transformation move on a timeline that honors complexity, not convenience. And in that recognition, you find peace. you also find resilience. Because when you know that stillness doesn't mean stagnation, you're less likely to quit when things move slowly. You're less likely to abandon your dreams when progress feels invisible. You're less likely to panic when life says, wait, because you trust that something is still moving beneath the surface. You've felt it, you've lived it, you know. In relationships, this understanding makes you a safer presence. You stop pushing people to change faster than they're ready. You stop needing conversations to resolve immediately. You allow emotional weather to move through its natural cycle without forcing sunshine when it's still raining. And because you give others that space, you create the conditions for true connection, true trust, true intimacy. Inside yourself, the same thing happens. You stop forcing your own healing. You stop setting arbitrary deadlines for your growth. You trust that your heart knows the way, that your soul's movements are trustworthy even when they're not immediately visible. And from that trust, patience deepens into something more beautiful than endurance. It becomes an active participation in life's unfolding, not a passive waiting. It becomes a dance with the unseen forces shaping your path. It becomes a living faith that presence itself is enough, even when proof hasn't arrived yet. So the next time you find yourself in a space of quiet, of delay, of apparent stillness, pause, breathe, feel the invisible wind moving through your life, even if the flag isn't fluttering yet. Trust the silence, honor the unseen work, stay steady, stay soft, and remember, delay is not death. Stillness is not failure. Waiting is not wasting. Patience isn't passive. It's powerful. And every moment you stay rooted in that truth, you become stronger, deeper, freer than the mind can ever explain. Once you begin to trust the silent movements beneath stillness, you naturally become less attached to rigid timelines. But there's another test of patience that creeps in even deeper than slow progress. The sudden, the unplanned, the chaotic moments that tear right through carefully built structures. Interruptions, accidents, surprises. These are the moments when life laughs at your plans and throws you a curveball you didn't ask for. And how you meet these interruptions shows the true strength of your patience more than any meditation cushion ever could. You can stay patient when things are slow because at least they're moving according to some rhythm you recognize. But when something unexpected explodes into your day, your mind panics. It clutches harder. It demands explanations. It scrambles to fix what was never supposed to break. And if you're not careful, you miss the hidden door that these interruptions open. The door to flexibility, to resilience, to a patience so alive it can dance in the storm without breaking. Buddhism doesn't teach patience as a sterile, frozen quality. It teaches patience as a living, breathing openness to life as it actually is, not just as you planned it to be. It's easy to be calm when everything goes your way. It's divine when you stay calm when everything doesn't. Think about your daily life. You plan your schedule, you set your intentions, you create a structure that makes sense. And then the phone rings with bad news. The car won't start. A loved one needs you when you had other things to do. Suddenly your whole script burns. The ego hates this. It thrives on feeling in control. It measures safety by how well reality matches its expectations. And when reality refuses to play along, it erupts in frustration, fear, or collapse. But a deeper wisdom whispers something different. It says, "This interruption is not a mistake. It's not an enemy. It's an invitation to bow instead of break, to loosen instead of harden, to move with life instead of against it." This bow is not resignation. It's not defeat. It's a conscious act of mental flexibility. It says, "I see that life is bigger than my plans. I see that my understanding is too small to grasp the full story right now, and instead of fighting what's happening, I'll adapt. I'll listen. I'll stay open." This flexibility is what real patience looks like when it's tested. It's not about gritting your teeth and suffering through surprises. It's about softening your mind enough to flow with surprises, to find wisdom inside them, to find growth inside them, to find yourself more whole, more awake, precisely because things didn't go the way you thought they should. The deepest lesson here is that interruptions aren't interruptions at all. They are life itself, moving in ways your mind didn't predict. Life isn't happening to you when plans fall apart. Life is happening. Period. The mind only calls it wrong because it clings to a fantasy where things always unfold according to personal preference. But life was never meant to obey you. Life is wild. It's alive. It's full of unexpected twists that aren't personal attacks. They're invitations to evolve, to grow deeper roots, to see more clearly, to surrender what you thought you needed, and find something even truer underneath. One practice that helps is to watch what arises in the first few seconds after an interruption. Notice the tightness in the chest, the rush of irritation, the stories that flood in. "This isn't fair. I don't have time for this. Why me?" Just notice them. Don't feed them. Don't follow them. Let them rise and fall like waves you don't have to ride. The faster you catch the mental story trying to label the interruption as bad, the faster you can step back into openness. Another practice is to deliberately reframe interruptions as training sessions. When something derails your day, instead of thinking, "This ruins everything," you think, "This is my real practice." The interruption becomes the curriculum. The surprise becomes the teacher. Your response becomes the lesson. This attitude transforms daily life. A traffic jam becomes patience training. A sudden workload becomes resilience practice. A cancelled event becomes surrender school. Instead of waiting for life to cooperate with your plans so you can be peaceful, you realize peace is something you bring to whatever life gives you. Flexibility doesn't mean you lose all structure. It means you hold your structure lightly. You plan with care, but you don't marry your plans. You commit to your path, but you don't collapse when the path twists unexpectedly. You trust your deeper capacity to adjust, to reroute, to stay true even when the map changes. It also helps to remember that many of life's greatest gifts come wrapped in disruption. You meet new friends because a meeting got cancelled. You discover a hidden strength because an old path closed. You find love, insight, adventure, not because everything went perfectly, but because it didn't. Patience with the unexpected means living with curiosity instead of fear. It means asking, "What is this here to teach me?" instead of, "How do I make this go away?" It means seeing the unexpected not as a barrier to your growth, but as the fuel for it. In relationships, this flexibility is life-changing. People will interrupt your plans. They will change their minds. They will disappoint your expectations. And if you need them to always behave predictably to stay peaceful, you'll suffer endlessly. But if you bow to the unexpected, if you stay open when they surprise you, you become a source of steadiness, not control. Within yourself, the same magic happens. Your own moods, emotions, and energy will not always obey your plans. You'll wake up tired when you meant to be productive. You'll feel sadness on a day you wanted to feel joy. And instead of attacking yourself for it, you can bow to it. You can say, even this belongs. You can move with your own inner weather instead of fighting it. Over time, this way of being creates a profound inner freedom. You're no longer imprisoned by the need for life to match your mental blueprints. You're free to meet life as it is. You're free to move with grace instead of fear. You're free to find joy even when the script burns and the day doesn't go according to plan. And maybe, just maybe, you start seeing that some of the most beautiful parts of life are the ones you never planned at all. The unexpected laughter, the unscripted adventure, the detour that became the real journey, the interruption that broke your heart open wider than you thought it could stretch. So, next time life surprises you, pause, breathe, bow. Let the tightness soften. Let the mind's craving for control dissolve. And step into the river of reality, wide-eyed, steady-hearted, ready to meet whatever comes, not with panic, but with patience, with presence, with the quiet flexibility of a heart that no longer needs life to be predictable in order to stay free. When you learn to bow to the unexpected and stay soft in the face of life's interruptions, a new layer of the journey begins to unfold, one that doesn't just test your flexibility, but your capacity to stay open over long periods of time. Some moments ask for quick adjustments. Others ask for endurance. And nothing stretches your patience across time quite like the practice of forgiveness, especially when the person you're forgiving still hasn't changed, or apologized, or even realized what they did. Buddhism teaches that real forgiveness is not a one-time decision. It's a path, a long, uneven, deeply human path. And true patience means walking it without knowing when or if the other person will ever meet you there. Forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood virtues. People often talk about it like it's a light switch. You forgive, and it's done. But what if forgiveness isn't an event? What if it's an arc? What if it's something you stretch your heart around, not because it's easy, not because the pain has vanished, but because you choose to keep love bigger than the wound? The Buddhist view of forgiveness is not transactional. It's not, you say sorry and I let go. It's not, you change and I release the grudge. It's about freeing yourself from the prison of resentment, even when justice hasn't arrived yet. And it's about holding a kind of space most people don't know how to hold, the space for someone else's growth over time, not instantly, not perfectly, not according to your timeline, but gradually, painfully, possibly, even if that possibility never blooms in front of you. It starts by understanding that people don't always become who they could be when you want them to. Growth is not a command you can issue, and real transformation, the kind that brings remorse, change, clarity, it sometimes takes years, decades, sometimes lifetimes. And when you choose to forgive, you're not saying what they did was okay. You're saying, I will no longer let your immaturity imprison my peace. This kind of forgiveness doesn't come from weakness. It comes from a strength that knows how to set down the weight of bitterness without needing the other person to carry it for you. It's not forgetting. It's not pretending. It's an act of spiritual maturity. It's recognizing that everyone is on a journey, even the ones who have hurt you. And while that doesn't excuse the harm, it explains the delay. They could not be who they weren't ready to become, and they might still not be ready. So what do you do with the space between the harm and the healing? That long, quiet stretch where you're learning to forgive and they're not yet learning to change. This is where patience reveals itself as love. Not soft love, not easy love, but steady, boundaried, unshakable love. A love that says, "You hurt me, but I refuse to become like you. I refuse to carry hatred. I refuse to let your unhealed wounds contaminate my spirit." Sometimes forgiveness includes reconciliation. Sometimes it doesn't. But either way, it includes patience. The patience to not need closure from them to begin healing. The patience to stop repeating the story just to stay angry. The patience to feel every emotion the wound left behind without rushing to numb it. Forgiveness stretches across time because healing does. And every day you choose to drop the weight again, you free yourself a little more. But this also means letting go of the fantasy version of who someone could be. Maybe they'll change. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll come back and say everything you wish they would. Maybe they'll stay trapped in their patterns forever. And part of the forgiveness process is grieving that uncertainty, grieving the relationship you wish existed, grieving the words you never got, grieving the version of them that never arrived. Patience in forgiveness means staying soft without staying stuck. It means you let yourself move forward even if they haven't caught up. It means you stop waiting for their transformation to begin your peace. And it means you release the role of judge and step into the role of witness, not to condone what happened, but to honor the truth of what it did to you, and then choose not to live inside that pain any longer than you have to. You might be the only one doing the work. They may never join you, but your growth is not dependent on their participation. Your healing is your own, and that's where your real power lives. This patience also asks you to resist the temptation to keep checking in emotionally. Have they changed yet? Do they regret it yet? Do they even care? That constant scanning keeps you tied to their journey instead of staying faithful to your own. You forgive not because they've evolved, but because you are evolving, because you're done tying your heart to someone else's unfinished growth. But even in this letting go, compassion has a role. Not pity, not spiritual superiority, but the humble recognition that all of us, at some point, have been someone else's disappointment, someone else's wound. All of us have failed to see what we needed to see when we were supposed to see it. And if we can stretch our hearts even a little bit to include that truth, we begin to touch the kind of forgiveness that sets everyone free. This doesn't mean you erase boundaries. Forgiveness with no boundaries is not compassion, it's self-abandonment. You can forgive and still walk away. You can forgive and still say no. You can forgive and still protect your energy. The difference is that now you're not making those choices from a place of resentment. You're making them from clarity, from self-respect, from a patience that knows not all love looks like closeness. There's also another layer to this long arc of forgiveness. The forgiveness you offer to the person you used to be, the version of yourself who tolerated things too long, who didn't speak up, who saw red flags and stayed anyway, who didn't know what to do. You can't keep punishing your past self for not having the wisdom you hold now. They were learning, they were surviving, they were doing the best they could inside a moment they couldn't yet understand. Let them rest. Forgiveness becomes real when it starts living in your nervous system, not just your thoughts. When you can see the person's name or hear their voice and not clench. When you can remember what happened without your breath going shallow. When you can speak of the past without drowning in it. This doesn't happen quickly. It doesn't happen because you decide it should. It happens because you patiently tend to the pain over time, with gentleness, with grace, and with the quiet decision to no longer build your identity around a wound. Forgiveness is not a reward for the one who harmed you. It's a release for the one who carried the harm for too long. And it takes time. And that's okay. So the next time your heart tightens with anger towards someone who still hasn't changed, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, what would it feel like to stop waiting for them to evolve before I begin to soften? What would it look like to honor my own growth enough to let go, even if they never catch up? Patience, in this way, becomes a sacred gesture of love, not toward who they are, but toward who they might become, not in your time, but in life's time. And that kind of love, stretched across years, across silence, across uncertainty, might be the closest thing we have to real forgiveness. After learning to hold space for someone else's growth over time, forgiveness starts to stretch your entire way of being. It stops being about one person and begins to shape how you meet life itself. The result isn't just a softer heart. It's a slower heart, a steadier nervous system, a deeper ability to stay present in moments that most people rush through or reject. And this is where the real practice begins, not in silence, not in nature, not in perfect spiritual environments, but in traffic jams, checkout lines, elevators, missed trains, loud neighbors, slow-loading screens. These are the new monasteries, and the question becomes, can you find sacredness here? Modern life is noisy, it's fast, it's designed to keep you moving, scrolling, reacting. Delays are treated like glitches, inconveniences are treated like emergencies, and your nervous system learns to live on edge, waiting, rushing, bracing. But the true gift of Buddhist patience isn't about waiting better. It's about not resenting the wait. It's about seeing every delay as a doorway back into presence, even in chaos, even in noise, even when everything outside you feels rushed. Think about the last time you were stuck, physically or emotionally, maybe in traffic, maybe in a long line, maybe in a life phase that just wouldn't move. The mind hates these moments. It wants to speed them up, escape, distract. But what if those moments weren't empty? What if they were full of something you've been too busy to hear? What if the slow moment is the sacred one? In Buddhist monasteries, a single bell can call everyone into presence. One sound, and all movement stops, not to punish, but to awaken, to remind, to say, you're here, you're alive, come back. But in the middle of a modern city, that bell doesn't ring. Or does it? Maybe the bell is the red light. Maybe it's the elevator that doesn't come. Maybe it's the slow walker in front of you. Maybe it's the traffic jam you didn't want. These moments can be the bell, if you train your mind to hear them that way. Most people treat delays as dead space, but they're actually thresholds, tiny openings in your day where you're not expected to do anything. You're just asked to be. And if you stop resisting that, something shifts. Your breath slows, your shoulders soften, your awareness expands. Suddenly, the moment you were trying to escape becomes the very place you find yourself again. This doesn't happen automatically. The default reaction is still impatience. You'll feel the surge of frustration. The mind will scream, "This is a waste of time." But now, you know how to respond. You notice the resistance. You don't fight it. You breathe into it, and then you look around. You hear the hum of life, the way the light falls through the window, the quiet pulse of your own heartbeat. The moment opens. And in that opening, a new kind of gratitude appears, not for something big, not for some future victory, but for this, for the stillness tucked inside the chaos, for the slowness you didn't choose but needed anyway, for the reminder that life isn't measured by how fast you move, but by how deeply you see. This isn't about pretending that inconvenience is fun. It's about recognizing that inconvenience isn't the enemy. Your resistance to it is. When you drop the resentment, the moment becomes simple again. And in that simplicity, the sacred becomes visible. Not because the world changed, but because your mind did. This practice turns daily life into a kind of moving meditation. You don't need to sit in lotus position to be awake. You don't need incense or chanting. You need awareness in the middle of noise. You need stillness in the middle of motion. You need enough space inside your mind to meet the world without pushing it away. Patience becomes less about how long you can wait and more about how fully you can stay. Can you stay present when the meeting runs late? Can you stay kind when the cashier is slow? Can you stay open when your timeline gets torn apart? These are the real questions. These are the modern mantras. And it's not just about surviving chaos. It's about finding beauty in it. The way a baby laughs in a crowded cafe, the way the light bends through a rain-streaked windshield, the way your breath steadies without trying when you stop rushing. These moments aren't waiting to be improved. They're waiting to be noticed. And the more you notice, the richer your life becomes. Not later, not after things calm down, but right here in the noise. This shift also changes how you see other people. You stop expecting everyone to move at your pace. You stop judging others for slowing you down. You see that everyone's carrying invisible burdens. Everyone's navigating their own storms. And suddenly, instead of getting annoyed, you feel compassion. Instead of hurrying past, you slow down and see them. You recognize yourself in them. And in that recognition, connection becomes possible, even in silence, even with strangers. Even the city itself begins to change. What once felt like chaos starts to feel alive. The traffic becomes rhythm. The noise becomes pulse. The movement becomes meditation. You stop looking for peace outside the city. You start bringing peace into it. And your presence becomes part of the sacredness you were searching for. This practice doesn't require a perfect mindset. It just requires a willingness to come back again and again. You'll forget, you'll get frustrated, you'll fall into old habits. But each time you remember, each time you choose presence over resentment, you strengthen a muscle that will hold you steady in every season of life. Because life won't always slow down for you. But you can learn to slow within it. You can become the bell that rings in the noise, the stillness that lives inside the storm, the breath that steadies when everything else wants to race. And the more you live like this, the more you realize something quietly profound. You don't need to escape the world to find peace. You just need to stop rushing through it. Because the sacred isn't hidden. It's everywhere. In temple bells, in traffic jams, in moments that ask nothing of you but to be fully alive while you wait. Once you learn to find sacredness in the pauses of everyday life, you begin to uncover something else quietly asking for your patience. Something deeper than traffic, longer than waiting rooms, heavier than missed deadlines. It's the healing that hasn't happened yet. The wound that still aches when no one is around. The grief that didn't vanish just because time passed. And this is where patience stops being a virtue you practice in public and becomes the private devotion you offer to your own heart. Because no matter how much you meditate, reflect, or try to move on, some wounds simply refuse to heal on schedule. Modern life is built around predictable timelines, deliverables, milestones, recovery charts. We are taught that time heals all wounds, but that phrase hides a truth most people are too scared to admit. Time doesn't heal everything, and even when it does, it doesn't move in a straight line. Grief has its own seasons, pain has its own rhythm, and the deeper the loss, the more confusing the process becomes. You don't just cry and then feel better. You don't just let go and then move on. You circle through sadness, silence, numbness, anger, tenderness, and then sadness again, sometimes all in the same afternoon. Buddhism doesn't ask you to rush your pain into silence. It asks you to bow to it, to sit with it like an honored guest, to let it teach you, not with words, but through presence, through stillness, through the very ache that you keep trying to outgrow. And this is where inner patience becomes more than just endurance. It becomes trust, the kind of trust that doesn't need progress to be visible, the kind that believes something is still healing even when it doesn't feel like it. Grief doesn't follow logic. You can know why something happened. You can understand that it wasn't your fault. You can list all the lessons you learned, and still, your chest tightens when you hear their name. Your eyes sting at random songs. Your body carries memories like shadows you didn't invite but can't quite erase. This doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human. Patience with grief means stopping the quiet war against your own timeline. It means refusing to compare your healing to someone else's. It means not forcing yourself to be over it just because others have run out of things to say. It means letting the wound breathe, even when it feels inconvenient, even when it embarrasses you, even when you thought you were past this part already. Healing isn't a staircase, it's a spiral. You revisit the same places, but with new eyes. Each return brings a deeper layer of clarity, a softer touch, a quieter sorrow. And even that is part of the process. Even when you feel like you're going backward, Something is being reclaimed. Something is being honored. Something is being felt more fully this time around. True patience with yourself means you stop asking your heart to be faster. You stop measuring your emotional progress like a productivity chart. You stop being ashamed of how long this is taking. Because healing isn't something you do, it's something that unfolds. And it unfolds when it's ready. Not when you're tired of hurting, not when you're embarrassed by your slowness, not when everyone else has moved on. You might find yourself returning to the same memories, telling the same stories to yourself in your head. That doesn't mean you're stuck. It means your system is still trying to metabolize something. It means the emotion hasn't finished completing its cycle. And when you stop trying to suppress that repetition, when you let it flow without judgment, the story begins to shift, not by force, but by space. There's a kind of sacred permission that comes with this form of patience. It says, yes, cry again. Yes, miss them again. Yes, feel confused again. It says, your softness is not a setback. It's your strength showing up differently today. And the more you create space for your own slowness, the more your nervous system begins to trust you. The more your body stops bracing for more pain, the more your breath deepens, not because you made it, but because you finally allowed it. Grief doesn't ask for you to fix it. It asks for you to witness it. And in that witnessing, something shifts. Not quickly, not obviously, but deeply. The moment you stop trying to get rid of the sadness is the moment the sadness stops needing to grip you so tightly. It starts to move. It starts to loosen. It starts to soften its edges, not because you forced it, but because you stayed. This kind of inner patience creates a new intimacy with yourself. You no longer abandon your heart when it's messy. You no longer pressure it to present as healed when it's still aching. You become the one presence that doesn't rush you. And in that, healing begins to feel less like a finish line and more like a lifelong friendship with your own tenderness. There will still be days when it feels like everything regressed. You'll wake up heavy. You'll move slower. You'll want to hide. And instead of making that wrong, this time, you'll recognize it as part of the rhythm. You'll know that healing sometimes moves quietly under the surface, like roots growing in winter. Invisible, but real. And you'll stay warm anyway. You'll trust anyway. This also changes how you respond to other people's pain. When someone you love is grieving, you won't try to fix them. You won't rush them through it. You'll sit beside them quietly because you've learned that presence is more powerful than advice. You've learned that the most healing sentence in the world isn't, "Here's what to do." It's, "I'm here and I'm not going anywhere." You stop needing the people you love to move at your speed. You let their wounds take the time they need. You stop seeing their breakdowns as problems and start seeing them as sacred openings, gateways into the parts of life most people never learn how to honor. And just like you learned to hold space for your own pain, you begin to hold space for theirs. This patience also changes your idea of strength. You stop equating strength with emotional control. You start seeing strength in the quiet courage it takes to cry, to feel, to not distract, to keep showing up with an open heart even after that heart has been shattered. You see that strength isn't about how little you're affected. It's about how deeply you can feel and still stay whole. And slowly, the wound that waited begins to shift, not because it was fixed, but because it was felt, because it was loved, because it was held patiently by someone who stopped trying to make it go away. You. That's the kind of healing that stays. That's the kind of growth that no one can take from you. And even though the scar may never fully disappear, it becomes a place where light can enter now. Not to erase the story, but to honor it. So the next time your heart starts aching again without warning, pause, breathe. Don't rush to label it a setback. Don't rush to distract yourself. Sit with it. Speak gently to it. Ask it what it needs, and then listen. Not to fix, but to witness. Not to cure, but to stay. Not to silence it, but to say, I'm not going anywhere. I have time for this. When you finally learn to sit with grief on its own terms, to stop pushing it to heal faster, to stop expecting yourself to feel better just because the calendar has turned, something inside you begins to shift. A new kind of rhythm appears, one that doesn't belong to clocks or culture or social expectations. It belongs to something older, something deeper, something that has been guiding all of life since before time was measured. This is the rhythm of nature, and it holds a lesson about patience that most people have forgotten. Nothing beautiful grows out of season. Look around at how the natural world moves. Trees don't bloom in winter. Rivers don't rush during drought. The earth does not force itself to hurry just because something wants it to. It follows cycles. It honors phases. It respects its own pace. And the most peaceful people, the most grounded, the most steady, are not the ones who have forced their growth. They are the ones who have aligned with this same natural intelligence. There's a reason ancient Buddhist teachings often reference mountains, rivers, seasons, and stars. It's not just poetry. It's wisdom. Nature teaches slowness not by suggestion, but by example. And when your inner life starts syncing with this outer wisdom, everything begins to feel more rooted, less rushed, less like a race, and more like a deep unfolding. Think about what happens when you rush a season. You plant too early, and the frost kills the seed. You pick too soon, and the fruit is bitter. The same thing happens in your emotional life. When you try to heal before the heart is ready, you pretend instead of recover. When you try to grow before you've rested, you burn out instead of bloom. When you try to speak clarity before it's ripened inside you, you create confusion instead of truth. Aligning with nature means respecting the winter inside you as much as the spring. It means not shaming yourself for needing time to lie low, to feel quiet, to stop producing and simply be. The world might not reward that stillness, but your soul will, because underneath the silence of winter, roots are deepening, energy is gathering, life is preparing for its next expression. And if you interrupt that, if you dig it up just to see how it's going, you damage what's trying to take form. This lesson is especially hard in a culture that celebrates constant output. We are taught to bloom on demand, to keep going, to stay productive, no matter what. But the earth never blooms non-stop. Even the most beautiful trees rest. They let their leaves fall. They let their branches sit bare. And not because they're failing, but because they're wise. You are allowed to move like this too. You are allowed to have seasons. Times when you go inward. Times when you shed. Times when you don't have answers. times when your energy is low and your creativity sleeps. These aren't signs that something's wrong. They're signs that something deep is aligning, preparing, becoming. And when you stop fighting these cycles, your inner world becomes much more peaceful. You don't panic every time you feel low. You don't force inspiration when it's gone quiet. You don't compare your slow season to someone else's harvest. You understand that everything has its time, and your job isn't to rush through it. It's to be present with it. Presence is what makes the seasons bearable. If you try to escape winter by pretending it's spring, you suffer. But if you wrap yourself in warmth, light a candle, slow down your breathing, and let the cold teach you stillness, you realize it was never trying to hurt you. It was trying to bring you home. Each season has something to offer. Spring teaches emergence, how to come alive again after rest. Summer teaches expression, how to shine and stretch and thrive. Autumn teaches release, how to let go with grace. And winter teaches rest, how to go inward and listen deeply. You need all four. You are all four. And if you try to live in only one, you lose your balance. Patience becomes easier when you stop seeing your low seasons as problems. When you stop thinking, I should be over this by now, or I need to be doing more. When you realize that even when nothing appears to be happening, something always is, just not always where you're looking. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Some seasons last longer than you expect. Some winters stretch, some springs stall. You can't control how fast your healing blooms. You can only keep showing up, keep listening, keep caring for yourself the way you would care for something sacred in nature. Gently, consistently, without demanding it be different. This also changes the way you approach goals. Instead of setting artificial timelines, you begin to ask, what season am I in right now? What does this part of me need most? Maybe it's not time to launch something. Maybe it's time to gather strength. Maybe it's not time to speak. Maybe it's time to sit quietly with what's forming. Maybe it's not time to push forward. Maybe it's time to return inward and tend to the soil. You begin to notice that your mind has its own seasons too. Times of clarity, times of confusion, times of insight, times of silence, and you stop fearing the silent seasons. You understand that confusion is not a failure. It's a field being tilled for a new kind of understanding. It's part of the cycle, and it will pass when it's ready. This wisdom softens your inner dialogue. You stop saying things like, I'm stuck. You start saying things like, I'm in a winter. You stop thinking, I should be doing more. You start asking, what season is this part of my soul in, and how can I honor it? This shift alone can release years of unnecessary pressure. In relationships, this rhythm helps too. You stop expecting people to be the same all the time. You allow your loved ones to have seasons of withdrawal, of silence, of growth that looks invisible. You respect their winter the same way you're learning to respect your own. And because of that, your love becomes more steady, more patient, more real. This alignment also returns you to the natural world in a physical way. You start noticing how the sky changes, how the trees speak, how the light moves through the day. You spend more time walking slowly, breathing deeply, syncing your nervous system with the pace of something ancient. and you feel yourself becoming more whole, not because you changed everything, but because you finally slowed down enough to remember who you were underneath the pressure. So the next time you feel behind, or restless, or disconnected from progress, pause. Step outside if you can. Look at a tree, a cloud, a river. Notice how none of it hurries. Notice how none of it apologizes for its pace. Let that be your teacher. Let that be your mirror. And remember, the same intelligence guiding the seasons is guiding you. You are not late. You are not off track. You are in a season. Trust it. Tend to it. Move with it. And your peace will not be something you chase. It will be something you grow. When you finally begin to honor your internal seasons instead of resisting them, life starts to feel less like a race and more like a rhythm. But even as you learn to slow down and rest when needed, the world around you often doesn't stop. Deadlines still arrive, emergencies still happen, decisions still need to be made quickly, and here lies the next test of patience, not in the stillness of winter, but in the fire of urgency. The question becomes, can you stay centered when everything around you speeds up? Can you be still even as you move? Buddhism offers a powerful image for this, the eye of the storm. The outer winds can be chaotic, the noise, the pressure, the demands, all spinning in wild circles. But at the center, there is stillness, complete quiet, and the practice is not to escape the storm, but to move from the center of that eye, to be fully engaged, fully alert, and still not swept away. This is what it means to develop a calm mind inside fast-moving situations, to act without panic, to move without losing balance, to be urgent without becoming chaotic. Most people confuse speed with stress. They think that if a situation requires fast action, it must also include anxiety, rushing, and mental overload. But urgency doesn't have to mean imbalance. Just because something is important doesn't mean your nervous system has to collapse in the process. The body can move quickly, the hands can type fast, the mouth can speak clearly, but the mind can remain still. This inner stillness isn't a passive calm, it's an active presence. It comes from training yourself not to let urgency hijack your awareness. It comes from learning how to move with intensity while keeping your breath deep, your shoulders relaxed, and your attention focused. You begin to realize that the real suffering in urgent situations doesn't come from the event itself. It comes from the way your mind reacts. The panic, the overthinking, the scattered attention, these are what drain you, not the task. Think about the last time you faced a crisis, a true moment of pressure. Maybe someone needed your help right away. Maybe a deadline dropped with no warning. Maybe something broke and you had to respond fast. Now think, how much of your exhaustion came from the action itself and how much came from the internal chaos that surrounded it? The spiraling thoughts, the fear of failing, the adrenaline that never settled. The Buddhist path teaches that you don't need to remove the urgency. You need to remove the panic. The same way a firefighter runs into a burning building with calm focus. The same way a surgeon works swiftly in an emergency room without letting the pressure shake their hands. That kind of presence is cultivated through practice, through breath, through training the nervous system to stay grounded even when the world is moving fast. One way to begin practicing this is by using the breath as an anchor. When urgency hits, most people stop breathing, or they breathe fast and shallow. But if you can keep your breath slow and steady, even for a few seconds, you keep the door to your awareness open. You give yourself a chance to respond rather than react. You create space between the stimulus and your decision, and in that space, wisdom has time to speak. Another way to stay in the eye of the storm is to break the moment into single steps. The mind loves to panic by stacking everything all at once. I have to do this, then that, then solve that too, and then what if that goes wrong? This spiral creates the illusion that the whole world is crashing at once. But the truth is, you can only do one thing at a time, and when you commit to that one thing fully, your mind settles. You move with precision instead of panic. This also means giving up the addiction to drama. Some people subconsciously feed on the intensity of chaos. They equate feeling rushed with feeling important. But that adrenaline rush eventually leads to collapse. Real strength doesn't need to shout. Real presence doesn't need to be frantic. And when you stop needing to feel overwhelmed in order to feel alive, you start accessing a deeper kind of vitality, one that's sustainable. Urgency also reveals your habits. When things speed up, your unconscious patterns get louder. Do you freeze? Do you lash out? Do you multitask and lose clarity? These patterns aren't moral failures, they're just untrained reactions. And every urgent situation becomes a chance to meet those patterns with mindfulness, not to judge, not to suppress, but to see clearly, to say, "Ah, there it is again," and then breathe. Choose differently. Act from presence. This practice also protects your relationships. When tension rises, people often hurt each other by reacting from stress. Words get sharper. Tone gets colder. Patience evaporates. But if even one person in the room stays rooted, breath steady, voice calm, the whole interaction shifts. Conflict de-escalates. Solutions come faster. Trust builds. And it only takes one person to bring that calm into the space. Let that person be you. Over time, you begin to trust yourself more. Not because you avoid challenges, but because you've trained your system to remain steady in them. You know what to do when pressure hits. You don't crumble. You don't lose your center. You breathe. You focus. You move. And you recover faster afterward because your nervous system wasn't torn apart in the process. Even high-stakes moments, public speaking, last-minute changes, emotional confrontations, become opportunities for mastery. You learn to feel the rush without losing control. You feel the surge of adrenaline, but it doesn't own you. It becomes energy you can channel, not a force that breaks you. This inner calm also gives you a powerful kind of clarity. When others are scrambling, you see more clearly. You speak with precision. You act with wisdom. And because your actions aren't driven by panic, they carry more impact. People begin to rely on you, not because you move the fastest, but because you move from the center. And that's a rare kind of leadership. Eventually, you stop being afraid of urgency at all. You no longer dread fast-moving situations. You welcome them, not because you enjoy the chaos, but because you trust your ability to meet it with presence. You know how to stay in the still eye of the storm, and from there, even the most intense moment becomes just another wave to ride, not something to run from, but something to meet with full attention. So the next time life speeds up, pause. Feel your feet. Drop your shoulders. Take one slow breath. Then act. Not from panic, not from habit, but from the quiet center within you that never moves, even when the world does. Once you learn to stay centered even inside fast-moving situations, a new opportunity appears. One that doesn't just involve how you move through the world, but how you connect within it. True patience doesn't end with managing emergencies or staying calm under pressure. It reaches into the way you listen. It transforms every conversation. Because the deepest form of presence is not found in how quickly you act, but in how deeply you can hear. In a noisy world where everyone rushes to speak, listening becomes a sacred delay, a powerful pause that can change everything. Most people don't really listen. They wait for their turn to talk. They prepare their next argument while the other person is still speaking. They nod politely, but miss the truth underneath the words. And in doing so, they miss the real conversation, the one happening between the sentences, behind the tone, inside the pauses. But Buddhist patience teaches that real listening isn't just a courtesy. It's an act of love. It's an act of surrender. It's an opening of the heart to something beyond your own thoughts. When you truly listen, you let go of your agenda. You let go of rushing toward your point. You step into the space between words and let it be wide enough for something new to be born. That space is where understanding lives. That space is where compassion grows. That space is where healing happens. Listening as a sacred delay means you don't jump to solve. You don't rush to advise. You don't assume you already know what's being said. You lean into the discomfort of not knowing yet. You sit in the slight awkwardness that comes from letting someone fully express themselves before you formulate your reply. And in that sitting, you give them a gift few people ever receive, the gift of being fully seen, fully heard, fully allowed. This kind of listening transforms conversations because it shifts the goal from winning or impressing to connecting. You're no longer trying to move the conversation toward a pre-decided outcome. You're allowing it to unfold in real time, like a river finding its path. You're responding to what's really there, not to what you assume or expect. One practice that helps build this kind of patience is what Buddhists call listening without ownership. It means when someone speaks, you don't immediately make it about you. You don't hijack their story with your story. You don't interrupt with advice unless asked. You stay present with their experience as it is, without needing to control it or claim it. This kind of listening is rare and powerful and deeply healing. Another practice is to listen to the silence, not just the words. Often what someone doesn't say is as important as what they do. The pauses, the hesitations, the changes in tone. When you're patient enough to hear these, you start understanding people beyond the surface level. You hear their fear behind the anger, their sadness behind the sarcasm, their longing behind the bravado. And because you hear it, you can meet them there, not with fixing, but with presence. This approach changes not just personal conversations, but professional ones too. In meetings, in negotiations, in conflicts. The person who listens deeply often ends up understanding the real needs in the room better than anyone else. They see solutions others miss. They build trust that others can't. Because people don't just want their ideas heard, they want their being acknowledged. They want to feel that they exist beyond their performance. Deep listening gives them that. But it's not always easy. Listening with patience means facing your own restlessness. Your mind will want to rush ahead. It will want to interrupt. It will want to correct. Each time you notice that impulse and choose to stay quiet instead, you're building an invisible muscle of presence, a muscle that will serve you not just in conversations, but in every aspect of life. Sometimes the hardest part of listening is hearing things you don't agree with, things that trigger you, things that make you want to argue back immediately. But sacred listening means you allow the speaker's truth to exist, even if it challenges your own. You don't have to agree, but you respect their right to feel what they feel, believe what they believe, without instantly trying to overwrite it. And in doing so, you create a space wide enough for real dialogue, not debate, but dialogue, to emerge. This patience also protects you from unnecessary conflict. Many arguments happen not because of real disagreement, but because people never feel fully heard. They escalate because underneath the words, the real need was ignored. The need to be acknowledged, respected, understood. When you meet that need early, with deep listening, you diffuse many tensions before they ever ignite. Over time, you'll notice something else. Listening in this way changes you. It softens your heart. It expands your empathy. It sharpens your intuition. You become less reactive, more compassionate, more wise, not because you collected more information, but because you allowed more humanity to enter your awareness. And you realize that listening isn't passive. It's deeply active. It's an offering. It's a form of service. It says, I value you enough to set aside my own urgency, my own narrative, my own ego, and make space for you to be here. In a world that rushes everyone to be faster, smarter, louder, this is revolutionary. Listening as sacred delay also helps you listen to yourself differently. You start noticing your own inner voices without rushing to shut them down. The fear that whispers under your confidence, the tenderness that hides beneath your anger, the grief that echoes under your laughter. You listen inwardly with the same patience you've been practicing outwardly, and your relationship with yourself becomes deeper, kinder, more whole. So the next time you enter a conversation, pause. Set down your need to impress. Set down your reflex to correct. Set down your urgency to be understood, and instead offer your presence. Listen not just for the words, but for the soul behind them. Listen not just with your ears, but with your heart wide open. And know that in doing so, you are practicing one of the highest forms of patience there is. The patience to stay, to receive, to honor the sacredness of another human being's unfolding story without needing to rush it into a shape that feels easier for you. After learning to listen with true patience, both to others and to yourself, you start to see how much wisdom comes from pausing. But at the same time, a more subtle challenge arises, one that can quietly sabotage real growth if you don't catch it. Sometimes what feels like patience isn't patience at all. Sometimes waiting isn't wise, it's avoidance. Sometimes silence isn't spacious, it's fear wearing a disguise. Buddhism invites you to look closely at this razor-thin line between spiritual procrastination and wise delay, because real patience moves from strength. Fake patience moves from fear. And knowing the difference can change everything. It's easy to tell yourself you're being patient when you're really just avoiding hard decisions. It's easy to call it trusting the process when deep down it's hiding from responsibility. Not all waiting is wise. Not all non-action is spiritual. Some of it is just dressed up fear, polished with beautiful language, but still rooted in resistance. The art is learning how to recognize when your delay is conscious and clean, and when it's contaminated by unconscious avoidance. Wise delay feels different than procrastination. Wise delay has clarity underneath it. Even if you're waiting, you're aware, you're engaged, you're listening to life for the right opening, you're staying active inside your stillness. Procrastination, on the other hand, feels sticky. It feels heavy. It feels like closing your eyes and hoping the problem disappears. It feels like handing over your power while pretending you're trusting the universe. One of the clearest signs of spiritual procrastination is discomfort. Not the discomfort of waiting, that's normal, but the discomfort of knowing you should act and still doing nothing. There's a tightness that comes when your inner wisdom is whispering, "It's time," but your fear convinces you, "No, later, not yet, maybe tomorrow." Wise delay brings peace. Spiritual procrastination brings anxiety that won't fully leave. Another clue is how much effort it takes to justify your waiting. When you're delaying wisely, you don't need to defend it. You don't need 100 reasons to explain why you haven't acted. It feels obvious inside, even if it's invisible outside. But when you're procrastinating, you find yourself over-explaining. You tell yourself complicated stories to avoid the simple truth. You're scared, you're stuck, you're resisting. Facing this honestly is one of the deepest acts of self-compassion you can offer yourself. Not to shame yourself, not to force yourself into reckless action, but to sit with yourself and ask, am I waiting from wisdom or from fear? And to be brave enough to hear the real answer. Wise delay respects timing without rejecting responsibility. It stays attuned to when life is asking for action and when it's not. Sometimes not acting is the most powerful thing you can do. Like a seed waiting for the right season to break through the soil. Like an archer holding their breath for the perfect release. Action taken too early would fail. Action taken too late would miss the mark. True patience listens so deeply that it knows exactly when to move, and moves without hesitation when the moment comes. Procrastination, though, often hides behind fake spiritual excuses. I'm waiting for a sign, you say, but deep down you already know the next step. You're just scared to take it. The universe will show me, you say, but life has already placed the opportunity in front of you. You just keep looking away. It's not wrong to wait for guidance, but guidance isn't always a booming voice from the sky. Sometimes it's the quiet inner knowing that feels scary because it asks you to grow. Training yourself to feel the difference between wise delay and avoidance is about becoming intimate with your own nervous system. Wise delay feels like spaciousness in your body. Even if the outer situation is unclear, your chest stays open, your breath stays deep. Procrastination feels like compression, like holding your breath, like shrinking away from your own power. You also start noticing what your waiting is feeding. Wise delay feeds your clarity. It sharpens your intuition. It strengthens your alignment. Every day you wait, your roots deepen. Spiritual procrastination feeds confusion. Every day you wait, you feel more tangled, more doubtful, more small. This distinction becomes especially important when you're on a spiritual path, because the ego loves to hijack good teachings and use them for its own hiding places. It loves to turn surrender into passivity. It loves to turn patience into paralysis. It loves to turn mindfulness into endless observation without action. True spirituality doesn't make you smaller. It makes you clearer, braver, kinder, more willing to meet life, not hide from it. So how do you practice wise delay without falling into spiritual procrastination? First, by staying brutally honest with yourself. No sugarcoating, no pretending. Every time you choose to wait, ask, is this a waiting born from strength or from fear? If it's strength, you'll feel empowered, even if it's uncomfortable. If it's fear, you'll feel trapped. Second, by checking your energy regularly. Wise waiting doesn't drain you. It sustains you. It feels like filling up a well, not watching it dry out. If you find yourself becoming more exhausted, more hopeless, more self-critical during your waiting, that's a clue that something isn't aligned. Third, by committing to presence even inside inaction. Waiting doesn't mean disconnecting. It means staying fully awake while things ripen, staying curious, staying engaged with your inner world, staying in relationship with your deeper knowing. And finally, by being willing to move when the moment comes. Wise delay is only wise if it leads to wise action. When you feel the quiet click inside, the shift that says, now, you honor it. Even if you're scared, even if it's inconvenient, even if it asks everything from you. That's when the patience you practiced in waiting turns into the power you need to act. This ability to move from deep listening changes your whole relationship with life. You stop being jerked around by external pressure. You stop being paralyzed by internal fear. You learn to flow with timing that's bigger than your own preferences. And because of that, your actions carry more weight, more precision, more truth. You also stop wasting your energy pretending. No more long explanations for why you haven't made that call, had that conversation, taken that risk. No more lying to yourself that you're waiting for clarity when you're really waiting for the fear to go away, which it won't. Fear doesn't vanish before you act. Often it vanishes because you act. So the next time you find yourself waiting, pause, breathe, feel your body, feel your mind. Ask honestly, am I waiting because I trust the timing, or because I'm avoiding the truth? Listen carefully, and whatever the answer is, meet it with kindness. But don't lie to yourself. Don't confuse fear for faith. Don't mistake comfort for courage. Patience is sacred. Delay can be sacred too, but only when they serve your growth, not your hiding. Only when they keep you rooted, not stuck. Only when they honor the river of life moving through you, not build dams against its flow. Once you begin to see clearly the difference between hiding and wisely waiting, a new question rises from the silence. How do you stay steady during those moments when fear still pulls at your sleeves? How do you return to your center when the mind races ahead or freezes in place. The answer has been with you since the beginning, hidden in plain sight, quiet but unshakable. It is the breath. And learning how to return to it, truly return to it, is not just a side practice. It's the heart of timelessness itself. The breath doesn't rush you. It doesn't punish you. It doesn't demand that you be more enlightened before you deserve peace. It simply offers itself over and over, patient, steady, alive. And when you choose to pay attention to it, not mechanically, but with presence, you step out of the story of time, out of the anxious clock, out of the endless future chasing that makes life so exhausting. You enter a different rhythm, the rhythm of being itself. Buddhist masters have always pointed to the breath not as a means of escape, but as a return, a way to walk yourself back into the moment when the mind has scattered like leaves in the wind. When you feel restless, when you feel impatient, when you feel like life should be happening faster, the breath reminds you, everything essential is already happening now. But not all breathing is conscious breathing. Most people breathe shallowly, unconsciously, letting the body survive without ever using breath as an anchor. Breath without awareness keeps the body alive, but does little for the heart and mind. True breathwork starts when you bring deliberate attention to the inhale, the exhale, the pause in between. Not forcing, not controlling, simply feeling, simply returning. Each conscious breath is a micro-moment of patience. A way of saying, I trust this moment enough to be here for it. Even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's slow, even when nothing big is changing outside, inside, something enormous is happening. You're training yourself to endure reality without running. This kind of endurance isn't cold. It isn't stiff. It's tender. It's warm. It's built breath by breath, like waves smoothing a jagged stone. Every time you stay with a breath, instead of rushing into thought, you soften some of the hardness fear builds around the heart. You become less reactive, less desperate, less enslaved to urgency. Practicing patience through breath doesn't mean using breathing to avoid life's demands. It means using breath to meet them from a different place. Imagine standing in the middle of a crowded, noisy day. Deadlines, decisions, conversations, expectations flying at you from every side. The old habit would be to tense up, rush, collapse inward. But now, you pause. You feel the breath enter your body. You feel it leave. And inside that tiny awareness, you remember, you are not the noise, you are not the clock, you are not the panic, you are the one breathing through it all. Breath teaches you that you can stay steady without becoming rigid. It teaches you that slowness is a source of strength, not a weakness. It teaches you that even when life pulls you in 1,000 directions, you can gather yourself here, now, in the body, in the heart, in the breath. One of the simplest but most profound practices is to spend a few minutes every day doing nothing but noticing the breath. Set no goals. Expect no fireworks. Just sit or stand or lie down and let your awareness ride the wave of inhale and exhale. Notice the mind trying to race ahead and gently come back. Notice the body wanting to fidget and gently come back. Notice the impatience that says, "This is a waste of time," and gently come back. Every return is a victory. Every return is a new thread strengthening the muscle of timelessness inside you. Breath also teaches you about impermanence. No two breaths are exactly the same. No moment can be repeated. Everything is in motion, even when it looks still. And the more you train yourself to witness this quiet dance inside you, the more you start trusting it outside you too. You realize you don't have to grab every opportunity the second it appears. You don't have to force every solution. Life is already moving. Life is already breathing. Your job is to participate, not dominate. This kind of breathing also transforms how you experience difficulty. Painful emotions don't have to be problems you solve instantly. They can be sensations you breathe with. Fear doesn't have to be a monster you run from. It can be a tightness you breathe into. Grief doesn't have to be a drowning ocean. It can be a deep tide you float on, breath by breath. When you practice returning to the breath under normal circumstances, you're training for the hard moments too. The moments when the mind screams, "Get out," or "Fix it now," or "This shouldn't be happening." In those moments, you will have a choice because you practiced. You will know how to stay with yourself instead of abandoning yourself. You will know how to breathe instead of break. And even when the situation demands fast action, your breathing practice will keep you from panicking. You'll move quickly without becoming frantic. You'll speak clearly without speaking from fear. You'll respond wisely instead of reacting automatically. Breath becomes not just your personal anchor, but your secret superpower. Over time, breathing with awareness becomes so woven into you that it's not just a formal practice anymore. It's your way of being. You breathe while walking. You breathe while listening. You breathe while loving. You breathe while grieving. And the breath teaches you over and over that timelessness isn't some mystical escape. It's right here, every second, inside the simplest thing you'll ever do. Inhale, exhale, pause, repeat. Breath also reconnects you to your body in a world that constantly pulls you into your head. It reminds you that your wisdom isn't only in thoughts, it's in your chest, your belly, your ribs expanding and contracting with life's invisible pulse. The body knows how to survive, the breath knows how to soothe. Trusting them brings you back into balance in ways no amount of thinking ever could. When the mind grows restless, when you feel tempted to rush, to fix, to escape, come back. Come back to the one thing that has been faithful since your first cry, your breath. It will teach you, patiently, how to live not from pressure, but from presence, not from hurry, but from depth, not from fear, but from a trust so ancient it needs no proof. So the next time the world tries to speed you up beyond your own rhythm, pause, find your breath, follow it down into yourself like a diver returning to deep water. Stay there a moment longer than is comfortable. Let timelessness wash over you in the simplest, most sacred way. When you return to the breath and begin to live from that steady, patient center, you notice something extraordinary starting to unfold, not through force, not through pushing, but through quiet, ripening, deep inside you. The path of growth you once tried to sprint down now feels different, less like a race to the finish, and more like a slow, living blossoming. And here, Buddhism offers one final, humbling truth about patience. Your awakening, your wisdom, your becoming is like fruit on a branch. It ripens when the time is right, not when you wish it, not when you push it, but when the deeper rhythms say, now. Most people want their transformation to happen on their schedule. They want to meditate for a few weeks and become peaceful. They want to forgive once and feel free forever. They want to read one book and dissolve all self-doubt. But real spiritual maturity doesn't move like that. It grows like a seed under the soil, silent, unseen, steady. You can't shout a tree into blooming. You can't yank a rose open without destroying it. You can't rush yourself into awakening without doing the same kind of damage. Letting the fruit ripen means trusting that your inner work is working, even when you can't see the results yet. It means staying faithful to the practices, the values, the small daily choices that nourish your soul, without constantly digging them up to see if they're growing fast enough. Every time you come back to your breath, every time you choose patience over reactivity, every time you listen instead of interrupting, you are watering something invisible inside you. And that something is growing, even when all you feel is doubt. One of the greatest barriers to inner peace is the belief that you are behind, that you should be more healed by now, that you should have mastered your fears already, that you should be stronger, wiser, calmer than you are. But awakening doesn't respond to shame. Growth doesn't accelerate just because you panic. If anything, that self-judgment slows it down, like picking at a flower's petals before it's ready to bloom. Patience with your own journey means celebrating the unseen work, the inner shifts no one else claps for, the quiet victories only you know about, the days you choose not to spiral into old habits, the moments you catch yourself about to lash out and instead soften your voice, the mornings you wake up feeling lost but still show up for your life anyway. These moments are not small. They are the slow, sacred ripening of your deepest self. And sometimes the most important growth happens in the seasons when you feel least spiritual, when you feel dry, when you feel disconnected, when you doubt every teaching you've ever loved. These seasons are not failures, they are winter for the soul. A necessary quiet period where old patterns die underground so that something truer can emerge in time. The mistake many people make is thinking that because they don't feel enlightened, they must be doing something wrong. But spiritual awakening isn't about feeling good all the time. It's about staying awake even when you don't. It's about remaining present even when your heart aches. It's about trusting the process even when the surface looks barren. Imagine a fruit tree in early spring. To the untrained eye, it looks like nothing is happening. Bare branches, no leaves, no flowers, no sign of life. But inside, deep inside the wood, life is moving. Sap is rising. Buds are forming. Roots are drinking from the earth. And if you judged the tree only by what you could see, you'd think it had failed. But if you trust nature's timing, you know better. You know that blooming takes time. You know that fruit cannot be rushed. Your soul is the same. Your healing is the same. Your awakening is the same. You are not behind. You are ripening. Letting the fruit ripen also means giving yourself permission to be where you are, not where you think you should be. Spiritual pressure is still pressure, and pressure hardens the heart. Patience softens it. When you release the need to reach some imagined milestone of enlightenment, you create the conditions for real growth, a growth that's organic, humble, alive. And this kind of growth often happens invisibly at first, before it shows up in how you speak, before it shows up in how you react. It shows up quietly, like new roots threading through the soil. It shows up in the way you breathe through pain instead of breaking apart, in the way you forgive yourself faster after old mistakes, in the way you stay tender toward life even when it disappoints you. You won't always notice the moment you've ripened. It often happens subtly. One day you realize that something that used to unravel you doesn't anymore. One day you notice that the storm passed and you didn't lose yourself in it. One day you hear a criticism that would have wounded you deeply before, and now you just breathe, stay open, and move on. This is not luck. This is not accident. This is the fruit of patience, ripening in its own perfect season. Trusting your ripening also means trusting that not all lessons come in the order you expect. Sometimes the mind understands before the heart catches up. Sometimes the heart forgives before the mind is ready to let go. Sometimes you grow strong in one area while still trembling in another. This is natural. This is human. Spiritual maturity is not uniform. It's textured, uneven, alive. Another part of letting the fruit ripen is releasing the need to prove your growth to others. You don't owe anyone demonstrations of your progress. You don't have to perform your healing to earn love or respect. Real growth is inward first. If others see it, fine. If they don't, it doesn't matter. The real harvest is in how you feel moving through your own life, not how many people notice. This patience also frees you from endless self-improvement traps. You stop treating yourself as a project that's never finished. You stop frantically trying to fix what was never broken at the core. You start realizing that the seed of who you truly are has always been whole. The work isn't to become something else. The work is to let that wholeness ripen naturally into expression. So when you feel frustrated with your pace, pause, breathe, remember the fruit, remember the tree. Remember that the most beautiful things in life don't rush, and they don't apologize for their timing. Stay steady. Keep tending your inner garden. Water your roots with kindness. Feed your soul with patience. Trust that even when you can't see it yet, the branches are thickening, the buds are forming, the fruit is growing heavy with sweetness, and one day, without panic, without pressure, without force, you will wake up and realize you have bloomed. You've just walked through the kind of patience no one talks about, the kind that isn't passive or weak, but steady, powerful, and rooted in deep wisdom. You've seen how real patience means waiting without bitterness, listening without needing to interrupt, breathing through the rush, and trusting that growth is happening, even when it's invisible. You've learned to bow to interruptions, hold space for grief, let go of the craving to be fixed, and finally understand that becoming who you truly are takes time, tenderness, and care. Not everything in life needs to happen quickly. In fact, the most important things never do. So if you're still waiting for something in your life to shift, remember this. The fruit is already forming. The seed has already been planted. And the only thing it needs now is time. Time and your presence. That's it. Keep breathing. Keep showing up. Keep trusting. If this brought you clarity, if it helped you soften into your own timing, let us know in the comments with the words, "I choose patience." Let's see how many of us are walking this path together. And if you want to keep training your mind to be calm in the chaos, still in the storm, and kind to yourself as you grow, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. That way, you'll never miss another lesson like this. Let this be your gentle reminder. Not all progress is loud. Sometimes it sounds like silence, sometimes it feels like breath, and sometimes it looks just like this. Sleep well, grow slow, and see you in the next lesson.